let me take you back to the PS2 era, when wrestling games were at their all-time peak, and during this era, there was no better indication of that than with the SmackDown series of games. Everyone that had a PS2 back then remembers their first time playing at least one of the SmackDown games, and to many, it probably felt like that was all the better it could get for wrestling games. Here Comes the Pain, for example, literally had everything you could want from a wrestling game, so realistically, how could things get any better from there? Well, just 1 year later, in 2004, developer Yuke's and publisher THQ would somehow make a game that was better than that in almost every way, and the game in question was none other than the original SmackDown vs. Raw. Released in November of 2004, coincidentally the same month as my other favorite wrestling game, SmackDown vs. Raw was met with praise from critics and fans alike, unless you were on the original Xbox though, in which case you could do nothing but cry yourself to sleep as you tried to convince yourself that Raw 2 was a good video game. Even if you missed out on playing SmackDown vs. Raw in its glory days like I did though, you have to admit that it's a damn good game and still holds up relatively well today. Now sure, the game is 90% sex appeal and about 10% wrestling, but you know what? That's not a bad thing. Where's my sex appeal on 2K25, 2K? Another thing about this game is that the cover is just so damn iconic, and for anyone who's ever laid their eyes on the game, it's just one of those things that's forever ingrained into your memory. At its core, it's so simple, but it tells you everything you need to know about the game with Vince McMahon's blue and red eyes. On top of all that, this was the first WWE game to have actual licensed music for the soundtrack, and Yuke's cooked hard with it. This game's soundtrack is so iconic, featuring artists like Breaking Benjamin, Core, and Zebrahead. It's a damn shame we don't get soundtracks as good as this anymore, because man, this was so peak. Anyways, without further ado, let's take a look back at the original SmackDown vs. Raw and find out what made it so great. By far, the best part about the original SmackDown vs. Raw is the gameplay, because my god, I don't think I've ever played a wrestling game from this era that's as fast and fluid as this game. Now sure, it's not perfect, and many would argue that Here Comes the Pain's gameplay was superior in every way possible, but disregarding all that, I'd say that SmackDown vs. Raw's gameplay is pretty damn solid in its own right. Everything is constantly moving in this game, and there is never a slow moment in any of the matches you play. Speaking of which, another reason why the gameplay is so good is the fact that it doesn't try to confine itself to realism. Now look, I don't mind the realistic gameplay of modern WWE games, but I feel like wrestling games are at their best when they don't try to replicate one for one what you'd see on TV. Thankfully, the original SmackDown vs. Raw understood that and let you do whatever you felt like. You can do crazy dive attacks off the barricade, beat the living hell out of your opponent without worrying about stamina slowing you down, and so much more. Something else I love about the gameplay is just how impactful every move feels. When you hit somebody in this game, you can really feel it through your controller with the vibrations, and that alone just makes this game more fun than it already is. When I'm playing a wrestling game, I want to be able to feel when I hit somebody over the head with a steel chair, giving them severe CTE as a result. When it comes to moves feeling impactful in this game though, it's all about the finishers. Finishers in this game truly feel like the end-all be-all of moves, which is exactly how they should feel. Upon hitting a finisher, you get these awesome camera cuts and light flashing effects, which do a great job at making the moment feel exciting. You know what's not exciting though? Trying to run in this game. I swear to god, all these superstars in this game must have something wrong with them, because they, for the life of them, do not know how to run in more than one direction at a time. Now I know this was a common mechanic in wrestling games at the time, but that doesn't make it any less annoying to deal with. When you run in this game, you have to know where you're going beforehand, because once you start running, there's no changing your direction unless you cancel your run and do it again. Now is this a huge deal at the end of the day? No, not really, but sometimes it can be a huge pain in the ass, especially when you miss your opponent and end up getting screwed over because of it. Outside of that though, and the occasional jank here and there, this game's gameplay still holds up surprisingly well. Like I said, it's not perfect, but the fact that even 20 years later I can pick up and play the game without facing any glaring issues is pretty impressive. Even the visuals still hold up pretty well in my opinion. They're not anything groundbreaking by any means, but there is charm to them, and I think that's what allows them to still look somewhat decent today. That's enough about the gameplay though. Now I think it's time we talk about the roster roster, and holy shit, this game's roster is so good. In my opinion, this is where the roster peaked in the SVR series, and the fact that it was the very first game is just mind-blowing. Now, for the most part, the roster is about what you would expect, just consisting of superstars who were around at the time, like John Cena, Batista, and Randy Orton. But on top of that, this game also gives you a pretty decent selection of legends, which only adds to how good this roster is. You can play as early 90s Grey Glove Undertaker, Andre the Giant, both members of the Road Warriors, and even 1997 Kane. With a stacked roster and the gameplay being as good as it is, you're probably wondering how this game could get any better. Well, let me show you. Absolute cinema. The matches in this game are, for the most part, pretty standard. You do, however, get some match types that haven't really shown up in the modern WWE games, like 3 Stages of Hell and the Bra and Panties match. Now, obviously, the Bra and Panties match is never coming back, but the 3 Stages of Hell match is something I wish would return. It's incredibly fun in this game, and the match in general is just awesome. Overall, the match selection is pretty good for what it's worth. It's nothing crazy, but there's enough on offer for you to have fun with, which is all that matters when it comes down to it. Now that I've talked about all that though, it's time we move on to the real main event, season mode. Now let me start off by saying that I've never been a big season mode guy when it comes to the WWE games, so keep that in mind when I tell you that this season mode is pretty damn good. It's nothing crazy by any means, but it's fairly entertaining and lasts you quite a while. Essentially, all you do is pick your superstar, which also determines what brand you'll be on initially, and play through a series of matches until you reach the end of the mode. Sadly though, there's no voice acting for the superstar you play as, which is kind of unfortunate, but on the bright side, everyone you interact with in the mode is still fully voice acted, so I'm willing to give it a pass. As you play through your matches, you'll be awarded with money, which you can then use to buy a variety of unlockables such as superstars and movesets. If you've never played through the original SmackDown vs. Raw season mode, I highly recommend it, as even 20 years later, it's still an absolute blast. Then there's pay-per-view mode, which essentially just sees you running your own pay-per-view, and honestly, that's about it. You do at least get cool looking show intros in the mode, which is something we don't even have now in the modern universe modes, but other than that, there's not much else to really say about it. If you're into that kind of thing, I guess it could be fun, but as someone who isn't, I just don't think I can really say too much about the mode without pissing someone off in the comments. So with that, I'm just gonna move on. Overall, the original SmackDown vs. Raw is still an amazing wrestling game, and honestly, hasn't even aged that much. Sure, the controls can be a little jarring and hard to get used to, but once you play the game for a while, it's really easy to get the hang of. The gameplay in general is incredibly fun, the season mode is still worth playing today, and with all the content that this game had going for it, it's got an immense amount of replay value. If you've gotten bored of the modern WWE 2K formula, I highly suggest going back and giving this game a go, because it's still one of the best wrestling games I've played in a while. Or you could play Raw too, but why on earth would you do that? You ever play a game so good, you start praising it before the game even starts? For me, that game is SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. SVR 2007 was the third game in the SmackDown vs. Raw series, and for many, it's considered to be one of the greatest wrestling games of all time. You know how insane that is? The fact that this was the third game in the SVR series, and this was already considered to be the peak of the series? Exactly, what other game series can say they've reached their peak with their third release? There's a lot more than I thought, but the point is, SVR07 was an incredible game. It took all the elements from the previous two SVRs, which were already great games in their own right, and managed to create something even bigger. However, before I actually talk about the game, there's something I have to do. This is a box. What's inside the box, you might ask? That's a good question. Now, the box in question was sent to me by my good friend Remorse, and apparently he threw in something extra in the box. Don't know what it is, but what the fuck is that? An image of a guy absolutely devouring a sandwich. Is that a sandwich? Who knows and who cares? There's still something else inside the box. It could be anything. A car? A copy of SmackDown vs. Raw 2007? It's an Xbox 360. Not just any Xbox 360 360 though. This one is modded. Well, you might as well just lock me up already. Anyways, thanks again to Remorse for sending this out to me. Now, let's get back to the video. SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 was released in November of 2006 and would be the first SmackDown vs. Raw game to come to Xbox, as the first SVR as well as SVR 06 were exclusive to the PlayStation 2. If you were on the original Xbox, you weren't getting anything that even remotely resembled SmackDown vs. Raw. You were gonna play WrestleMania 21 and like it, damn it. Now yes, while I did say this was the first SVR game to come to Xbox, the game was only released for the Xbox 360, leaving original Xbox players in the dust. Of course, much like SVR 06, the game also saw releases on the PS2 and PSP. No PS3 version though, which, let's be honest, was pretty disappointing. Imagine spending $600 on a PS3 at launch just to be told you can't play SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. And Cars the video game. SVR 2007 not releasing on the PS3 was a damn shame, because this is a game that was just begging to be played by as many people as possible. SVR 07 is, dare I say it, one of the greatest wrestling games ever made. It had a pretty entertaining season mode, a solid roster, and the gameplay was just so much fun. With all that out of the way though, I think it's time we dive into the game and find out what exactly made it so great. Starting with the gameplay, the best way I can describe it is, well, have you ever done crack? Well, imagine that, but instead of crack, you're playing SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. SVR 07 plays like a dream. The gameplay in this game is so smooth and fast-paced that it makes other wrestling games feel slow in comparison. This game just gives zero fucks about realism and lets you do whatever the hell you want. Now, not to say there isn't simulation elements in the game, there definitely is with the stamina mechanic, but once you turn it off, matches instantly go from being somewhat realistic to bad shit insane. Hell, you can even spin the spinner belt by pressing right trigger during the entrance of whoever has the belt on. It's the little things like that that make me appreciate this game even more. The gameplay of this game feels like a culmination and improvement of both the previous SVR games that came before this one. The original SVR and SVR 06 were great games, but SVR 07 just takes what those games did with their gameplay and adds to it. Yeah, remember when sports games were different with each new release every year? What a time it was. Anyways, thanks to SVR 07's gameplay being as fast and fluid as it is, it means matches always keep moving and never get boring. It doesn't matter which match type you play, whether it's just a standard one-on-one or no DQ, the matches will always be fun to play. Speaking of matches, let's talk about some of the match types, shall we? Now obviously you have your standard match types like tag team, singles, triple threat, etc, but the real fun lies within the main event match types. Main events is where you'll find all the special matches like the Buried Alive match, Hell in a Cell, as well as the Money in the Bank match, which was the new featured match type in this game. Money in the Bank was fairly new in WWE on TV around this time as well, so to see it included in this game was pretty awesome. Now obviously I'm not going to go over every match type featured in the game, as they all play about how you would expect them to, but I do want to very briefly talk about a few, starting with backstage brawls. For backstage brawls, you have two options for where you want to brawl, those options being a bar or a parking lot. Honestly, the bar is probably my favorite because of how unique it is compared to the backstage brawl arenas we usually get in WWE games, and plus the interactive elements in the bar just make it so much fun. The second match type I want to talk about is the Buried Alive match, because it's probably one of the best match types in the entire game. Sure, at the end of the day, it's a glorified button mashing minigame, but that doesn't change the fact that it can be an absolute blast to play with a friend. The final match type I want to talk about is of course the Money in the Bank ladder match. It's just as chaotic as you would expect it to be and plays exactly how you'd expect it to. I really don't know what else you want me to say. It's a fucking ladder match. That's really all there is to say about the match types though, so how about we move on to the arena selection. While the arena selection in this game isn't massive by any means, it's still got enough variety to prevent the game from getting repetitive and boring. I still love the way the arenas look in this this game. I really don't know what it is about them exactly, I just think they look really cool. You know what else is cool about this game? The roster. This game is one of the best rosters I've ever seen. Not only does the game feature the best of the 2006 WWE roster and Paul Burchill, but it also has a great variety of legends to choose from. Now, a lot of them are locked since you're supposed to unlock them in season mode, and believe me, I don't have enough time to sit down and unlock all of them for this video, but man, seeing guys like Roddy Piper, Jerry Lawler, and Bam Bam Bigelow in a WWE game in 2006 was pretty crazy. Overall, the roster, gameplay, and arena selection in this game are all around solid. The gameplay honestly holds up surprisingly well despite the game being 18 years old. Sure, the controls are a little weird, but they're easy to get the hang of and don't feel super confusing. Now that I've talked about the gameplay and whatnot though, I think it's time we talk about the other modes this game has to offer. When it comes to extra modes, this game gave you 3, which consisted of GM mode, pay-per-view mode, and of course, a season mode, which was to be expected around this time. The first mode I want to talk about is GM mode, because it's by far the most talked about mode from this game. GM mode in this game is a lot of fun. When starting the mode, you have the option of either sticking with the default SmackDown and Raw rosters, or being able to draft your own roster. I definitely think drafting your own roster is the best option, because where's the fun in just using a default roster? You're then able to choose which brand you want to control, with the options being Raw or SmackDown. Once you choose your brand, you're then able to draft a roster. No Gunther McGurty in this one, but you know what? I'll take it. Upon starting the draft, the computer was already cooking me. I mean, look, I chose Candice Michelle and John Cena. The CPU got DX. It was at this point when I realized if I wanted to beat the CPU, I was gonna have to make a good pick. So of course, with this in mind, I chose Daivari. Son of a bitch. After the draft, you're then able to choose your champions for your brand, and then it all goes downhill from there. I'm in the negatives and I haven't even booked a show yet. Well, apparently I'm not the best person to show off GM mode, but essentially all GM mode boils down to is you run your brand how you want while competing against the opposing brand. Well, I'm cooked in GM mode, so how about we talk about the season mode? The season mode in this game is pretty wild. There's no way I can do the entire season mode justice with just this video because there's so many different stories between both Raw and SmackDown. Doing all these stories would require multiple playthroughs with different superstars, which I just do not have the time for, but that doesn't mean the season mode is bad by any means. I really like the fact that there's multiple paths you can take throughout the season mode. I also really like that Raw and SmackDown superstars have their own separate storylines. So if you play as a SmackDown superstar, you're gonna play a completely different story as opposed to what's on the Raw side of things. The season mode in this game even features full voice acting from every superstar in the mode. Everyone is voice acting from everybody you interact with to even the superstar that you play as. If you're a big fan of season modes in WWE games, this is definitely the definitive season mode experience. You know what's not the definitive season mode experience? Pay-per-view mode. Pay-per-view mode stinks. Create a pay-per-view, run it, that's it. It's probably the least interesting mode in the entire game, and I wouldn't find myself ever really playing it. I'm sure there's someone out there who genuinely enjoys this mode, but it's just not for me. Honestly though, that's about it for the extra modes in this game. The GM mode is a lot of fun, as I said earlier. The game's season mode is the best season mode we've ever had in a wrestling game, and the pay-per-view mode just blows. With that though, I feel like I've covered all this game has to offer, so let's get this over with. In conclusion, SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 was a masterpiece of a game. While they covered most everything this game had in it, there's still some things I definitely missed because of the wide range of things this game contained. Now of course, I can't end the video without at least mentioning the awesome soundtrack with bands like Rise Against and 3 Days Grace. I really don't think I've ever played a game that's had as legendary of a soundtrack as this game. The soundtrack, the gameplay, GM mode, and all that other stuff I mentioned in this video are the biggest reasons this game is looked back on so fondly and is remembered as being one of the greatest wrestling games of all time. All of those things made this game feel special, and it's because of that reason I don't think we'll ever get another game like SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. I just hope the game gets a PS3 release soon. In 2004, we saw the release of the very first entry in the SmackDown vs. Raw series, and to say the series would go on to be a success would be an understatement. The SmackDown vs. Raw series is about as iconic as it gets, to the point where even if you aren't a wrestling fan, you'd still know what SmackDown vs. Raw is all about. Now sure, you may not know what the hell a Carlito is, but you're still familiar with the games at the end of the day, and that's what matters the most. As with all good things though, eventually they have to come to an end, and in 2010, that's exactly what happened to SmackDown vs. Raw when we finally got the final entry in the series in the form of SmackDown vs. Raw 2011. Released in October of 2010, SmackDown vs. Raw 2011 very quickly cemented itself as one of the greatest wrestling games ever made, as even back then, when it was still incredibly new, it was very easy to tell just how special the game was, as it managed to do everything that the previous games in the series had done, but on an even grander scale. Now sure, SVR 2011 might not have had a GM mode like SVR 07, or even a traditional season mode for that matter, but at the end of the day, SVR 2011 still felt rich in content and was just as fun and entertaining as the previous SVR games. SmackDown vs. Raw 2011 had an absolutely incredible roster, some of the best gameplay in the entire series, 5 equally as entertaining Road to WrestleMania stories, and a whole lot more. Anyways, with all that out of the way, I think it's time we take a look back at SVR 2011 and find out what exactly made it so awesome. The first thing I want to talk about when it comes to SVR 2011 is the gameplay, because honestly, no wrestling game has ever been able to match just how fun this game's gameplay was since. SmackDown vs. Raw 2011, as I hinted at earlier in the video, felt like a culmination of every SmackDown vs. Raw that had come before it, and as a result, its gameplay is just as phenomenal as you would expect it to be. Seriously, it still blows me away that this game's gameplay holds up as well as it does damn near 15 years after it was initially released. First of all, the actual wrestling in this game feels incredibly smooth. Hell, I'd even go as far to say that it feels better than it does in 2K24. Everything from the strikes to the grappling still feels excellent, and I absolutely love how smooth it is to transition from one move to another. When it comes down to which game in the SmackDown vs. Raw series has the best gameplay, I definitely say SVR 2011 holds that title. This game manages to make even doing the most mundane of moves feel fun and exciting, and oh my god, hitting a finisher has never looked this cool in a wrestling game. At its core, SmackDown vs. Raw 2011 does lean more into the arcade style wrestling for its gameplay, but it also manages to mix in a few simulation elements as well, like the fact that rather than utilizing an actual HUD and health bars like previous SVR games did, the damage done to a wrestler will show up visually on their body progressively throughout the match. For instance, throughout a match you'll notice that the more damage you take from your opponent, your superstar's chest will progressively get more and more red. Now of course this is a feature that was carried over from SVR 2010, but it is legitimately a really cool feature and it really adds to the immersion of each match. The other big thing that made this game's gameplay as great as it is the insane weapon physics. This is by far the biggest reason people love this game and look back on it as fondly as they do, because to this day, we still haven't gotten a wrestling game that has done weapon physics as well as this game did all the way back in 2010. The weapon physics in this game are still absolutely mind-blowing because all the weapons react so well to the environment. Tables actually break in a more realistic manner and will shatter into pieces upon impact. Trash cans will show sign of damage the more you use them, and any weapons laying in the ring react as the ring bounces with each move that's executed. Extreme Rules matches in this game just feel like one big sandbox where you can do whatever you want with weapons because the game gives you so much freedom. I mean, come on, what wrestling game lets you spin with a goddamn ladder around your neck? Not 2K24, that's for sure. Now that I've established just how great the gameplay is though, I think it's time we talk about this game's roster because holy shit. I don't know what THQ and Ukes were on at the time, but my god, this game's roster is absolutely incredible. Now sure, when you compare it to the rosters we get nowadays, this really isn't anything all that special, but back in 2010, this was pretty damn solid, all things considered. First of all, the majority of the actual roster that was present on WWE TV at the time in 2010 was pretty stacked for what it was worth, which of course meant that every big star you could think of who was still around in 2010 made it into this game. Guys like Matt Hardy, Edge, Undertaker, Kane, even goddamn Vladimir Kozlov, for those of you who just really love Vladimir Kozlov back in the day. Honestly, what I really loved about this game's roster though was the fact that it went all out when it came to legends. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Terry Funk, and even goddamn Ricky like a Dragon Steamboat. Honestly, with how good this game's roster was, I'd maybe go as far to say that it maybe had the best roster out of all the SVR games. Hell, even Rob Van Dam was included in the game, which is pretty wild when you remember he was still in TNA at the time of this game's release. Now that I talked about all that though, I think it's time I talk about everything else this game has to offer, like the best mode in the entire game, for example, Road to WrestleMania. Road to WrestleMania is essentially the campaign or story mode of SmackDown vs. Raw 2011, and this would be its second to last appearance in a WWE game ever before showing up for the final time a year later in WWE 12. The mode of course began in SVR 2009, and SmackDown vs. Raw 2011 has without a doubt the best iteration of the mode ever. The mode is divided up into 5 different stories, following 5 different superstars as they each follow their path to WrestleMania while also dealing with a lot of shenanigans, if you will, on the way there. Each story also allows you to free roam backstage and interact with the various superstars, which is a really nice feature that I'd love to see return in some shape or form in the modern games. Now, I'm not going to go in depth and talk about all the Road to WrestleMania stories, as they're all very simple and generally have the same conclusion, but the coolest one by far is definitely Undertaker's. Now, rather than playing as The Undertaker for the Undertaker story, since all the other stories usually have you playing as the superstars their stories are centered around, this one instead shakes it up by letting you pick from a small selection of superstars, including your custom superstar, and from there your main goal is to defeat The Undertaker at WrestleMania and end his streak. It's honestly one of the best Road to WrestleMania stories you could possibly play, as it leans so heavily into the supernatural and paranormal elements of The Undertaker's character. He's constantly playing mind games with you throughout the story, and it's so bizarre that at times it even leaves you questioning whether you're still playing a wrestling game or not. Overall, it, as well as the other Road to WrestleMania stories, are still pretty fun to run through, and who cares if they're not the most well-written stories of all time? At the end of the day, they're still dumb fun, and that's why I love them so much. You know what else is dumb fun? This game's universe mode. Why can't we get a universe mode like this nowadays? I have no idea, but playing this game's universe for this video made me remember just how fun it was, and the fact that it's still just as entertaining is really awesome to see. Now, I've already talked about universe mode numerous times on the channel, but if you're unfamiliar, essentially you get to control and run your shows the way you want, and usually the mode can be pretty boring. When it comes to this game's universe mode though, it does a great job at mixing in cutscenes and doing everything it can to shake up the experience to make it more fun. Then on top of Universe and Road to WrestleMania, there's Create a Story, which to this day is still one of the most requested features to come back in the modern WWE games, and for good reason. Create a Story allows you to let your imagination run wild and create these ridiculous stories without any real limitations. Now that I've talked about all that though, I think it's time we finally wrap things up. Overall, SmackDown vs. Raw 2011 was and still is an awesome experience, and it's honestly pretty impressive to see just how well it still holds up today. In a lot of ways, I would say it does things that outshine even WWE 2K24, like the weapon physics, create a story, create a finisher, Road to WrestleMania, and so on and so forth. Whether you grew up with SmackDown vs. Raw 2011 or just picked it up last week to give it a try for the first time, it's hard to deny the impact that it left on wrestling video games as a whole. At the same time though, if it weren't for SmackDown vs. Raw 2011, we would have never gotten 2K20. I take back everything I said. You know, WWE 2K25 is great and all, but it just doesn't have enough murder and destruction in it. That's better. Wrestling Empire, also known as the greatest wrestling game not made by WWE. No, instead, this game was made by one guy by the name of M. Dickey, who's famous for his games that have the graphical quality of a PS1 game, while at the same time having some of the most bonkers gameplay you've ever seen. Wrestling Empire, in particular, is a remake slash remaster of one of his older games by the name of Wrestling Revolution 3D, which in turn was a remake of Wrestling Revolution, which was 2D rather than 3D. Wrestling Empire, though, might just be one of the greatest games MDickie has ever developed, as it just has so much content and enough randomness to keep you playing for hours and hours. I swear, this game is more replayable than even WWE 2K25, and whereas that was $130 goddamn dollars, Wrestling Empire gives you a more fun experience for about $110 less, being priced at $20. Anyways, without further ado, let's dive into Wrestling Empire and find out what makes it so great. Also, shout out to BoyDub200, who's been requesting this video for a long time. I'm sorry it took this long, BoyDub, but the video's finally here, so you can rest easy now. Now, don't let these graphics fool you. This game is certainly a lot better than it looks, because yeah, well, it may look no better than WWF Raw for the original Xbox, and that's certainly pushing it. The gameplay is at least better than WWF Raw for the original Xbox. Wrestling Empire is a game that gives you total freedom in what you're allowed to do. And I don't mean, oh, you can do certain types of moves you may not be able to do in WWE games. I mean straight up murder. You can kill to your heart's content in this game, and as someone who's played countless wrestling games over the past year, it's nice to have a change of pace for once. Being able to kill IRS via a train for literally no reason at all is something I never thought I'd be able to do in a wrestling game. Yet, here we are. IRS, you might want to get up, man. As far as the actual wrestling goes, it's pretty simple and straightforward. The face button serves as your way of striking and grappling, and you can do a wide variety of moves to make sure your opponent is left paralyzed for life. Now, don't get me wrong, this game is janky as all hell, so the wrestling can be a bit rough sometimes, but when it's smooth, it's really smooth and really fun. Something else I love about this game is the variety of weapons at your disposal, because unlike traditional boring wrestling games that only let you use tables, ladders, and chairs and other boring weapons, this game lets you use stuff like chainsaws and guns. Yeah, that's right, this game's cool. This game's no DQ matches don't fuck around. Speaking of which, this game gives you full freedom to make any type of match you'd like. Whether you want to fill the ring with water to have a Shark Tank match, or have an explosive barbed wire rope match, there are absolutely no limits in this game, and it's really awesome. Moving on to the roster mostly consists of real-life wrestlers from various companies, and with the use of a mod, they all have their actual names attached to them, whereas in the vanilla game, they'd all have knockoff names to get around copyright. I honestly prefer having the actual names of the superstars, but the original knockoff names have a certain charm to them that make them special in their own right. That's enough about the gameplay though, so how about we move on to the main course of the game, the career modes. Upon starting up the game, getting to the main menu and hitting play, you're given the choice between the booking career mode and the wrestling career mode, both equally as fun in their own ways. First off, the booking career sees you running your own show, and it's just as fun as you can imagine. You're given a set budget and have to work with what you have to try and generate profit. As far as what you can do in the mode, you're given as much freedom as possible, which makes being a GM a blast. You can poach talent from other companies, screw over your talent, and even go to court for various reasons. You can also fire talent at will, which can be pretty useful if you accidentally hire a superstar whose contract is too expensive and puts your company into severe debt. The booking career also has you competing against other shows, which just adds so much to the fun factor, as you never know where you're going to be placed in the rankings after each week. Overall, the booking career is a really fun time and can last you hours upon hours due to how dynamic it is. Speaking of which, next up we have the wrestling career mode, which has you playing as a wrestler as you work your way up to become one of the best wrestlers in the world. The wrestling career is definitely the best mode in this whole game, as it's so unbelievably random that you're always guaranteed to find something new to have fun with. First of all, this mode has a whole entire free roam element with various buildings to explore, such as a subway, which is great for murdering people by throwing them in front of trains, the hotel, which is where you sleep, and a gym, because as a wrestler, you have to make sure you're physically fit all the time. Second, you can just run in during other people's matches, which is always awesome. And third, you can just not take the mode seriously at all, like me, and go absolutely wild trying to kill as many people as possible. Now sure, going down that route will get you beat up a lot, but hey, the fact that it's something you can do makes up for it in its own regard. As you progress through the mode, you'll see various news headlines updating you on what's going on in other companies, and these are always so entertaining that they never once get repetitive. Wrestling Empire is an incredibly simple wrestling game, but its simplicity is what makes it fun. The graphics may not be great and the gameplay may be simple, but the game gives you so much freedom and is so dynamic in how certain gameplay aspects are handled that it overshadows the simplicity of everything else. The graphics and dumb gameplay are a part of Wrestling Empire's identity, so when you take those away, all you're left with is a generic wrestling game game that wouldn't be nowhere near as good. If you haven't played Wrestling Empire, I implore you to do so, as it's absolutely one of the greatest wrestling games of all time. And you know what? We really need more wrestling games with murder in them. It's 2024, you know what that means. WWE 2K14 is almost 11 years old. Feel old yet? Despite its age, WWE 2K14 still remains one of the greatest WWE games of all time, depending on who you ask. There's two types of people: the people that consider WWE 2K14 to be the greatest wrestling game of all time, and then the people that'll say, actually, WWE 2K14 sucks. AEW Fight Forever is the greatest wrestling game of all time. Regardless of your opinion on 2K14 though, whether you think it's good or bad or belongs in the trash with 2K20, you have to admit that 2K14 did a lot of things right. 30 years of WrestleMania, create a story, as well as a damn good roster. So in this video, I wanted to talk about all of those things and really find out what made WWE 2K14 so great. Released in 2013, WWE 2K14 was the final WWE game released under THQ, as during this time they were struggling with their biggest obstacle yet, bankruptcy. While when the games you're known for consist of Finding Nemo the video game and Fairly Odd Parents breaking the rules, you're bound to file for bankruptcy eventually. So before THQ is vanquished to the Shadow Realm, 2K came in like they were Jesus or something and saved 2K14 from being lost forever. Before 2K came along, WWE 2K14 would have just been called WWE 14, continuing the numbers series of games, as I like to call them, of course being WWE 12 and WWE 13. So because of this, 2K slapped their name on the game, officially making it WWE 2K14. Anyways, now that the backstory's out of the way, what truly made 2K14 so special? Well, the first thing I want to talk about that I believe made 2K14 so special was the amount of match types that were in this game. Slobber knocker matches, I quit matches, inferno matches, it's all here. A lot of these match types would never appear in a WWE game again outside of the last gen versions of the 2K games, and some of these match types are only just now returning in 2K24. Matches like Gauntlet and Special Referee made their last appearance in this game. Look, as excited as I am for Gauntlet and Special Referee matches to come back in 2K24, there is no reason why they should have been gone from the games for 11 years. Let me ask you this though, if these matches had remained in the games from 2K15 and onwards, what major selling points would they have for 2K24? Exactly. None. Every match type in 2K14 is an absolute blast to play. Extreme Rules matches are chaotic as always, and hell, if you want, you can even do a fatal 4-way backstage brawl, which none of the later 2K games let you do, besides 2K24 of course, which will have this as an added feature. As for some of the other match types in this game, there's the First Blood match, Iron Man match, all of these matches being pretty fun in their own right. But I think that's enough about the match types. Now it's time to talk about the roster. 2K14's roster is absolutely stacked, with all the legends unlockable from 30 years of WrestleMania, which I'll talk about later, plus all the superstars in the base roster, not even including DLC. What you end up getting is an overall really solid roster. The roster got even better with the DLC because you could play as American Badass Undertaker, Ultimate Warrior, as well as WCW Big Show, which is just awesome. 2K14 didn't stop with just having a stacked roster though, because THQ and Yuke's went all in with this arena selection. Because of 30 years of WrestleMania, we got all 29 WrestleMania arenas, and what's even cooler in my opinion is despite this game coming out before WrestleMania 30 happened, they still managed to put a WrestleMania 30 arena in the game. It's more of a concept arena, as like I said, WrestleMania 30 hadn't happened yet at the time of this game's release, but with this WrestleMania 30 arena in the game though, it technically means that 2K14 had 30 WrestleManias represented in the game, which is just absolutely insane. As for the actual gameplay of 2K14, it's probably the best we've ever had in a wrestling game. Sure, the gameplay of previous games like SBR 2011 was great, but 2K14 just does so many things right. It's the perfect mix of that arcade style gameplay as well as the simulation style gameplay. The gameplay is fast and responsive and just overall really solid. The already solid gameplay becomes even better when you turn off stamina, so you can just wild out with no limits. Another cool thing this game had was OMG moments. Now sure, these would appear in the later games as well, but man, the OMG moments never fail to be super exciting and fun to watch. These add to the already incredible gameplay and make it even better. While the match types and gameplay are solid though, the real star of the show here is 30 Years of WrestleMania. This mode takes you through 29 WrestleManias and sees you playing at least 1 to 3 matches from each WrestleMania, all the way from the first WrestleMania to what was the most recent WrestleMania at that time, of course being WrestleMania 29. Look, all I gotta say is, holy shit, how did they do this in 2013? The fact that even while THQ was in their final days of existing as a company, they managed to fit this many matches into this mode is insane. We're only getting 21 matches in 2K24 for its 40 Years of WrestleMania mode, but a dying THQ was able to fit 46 of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time and Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 20 into this game. This mode to this day is really fun to play through. Seeing all these iconic WrestleMania matches recreated with in-game cutscenes is just awesome, and just being able to play through all these matches yourself is always going to be really cool. Once you finish 30 Years of WrestleMania though, there's one more game mode. That mode being none other than the Streak. This mode is maybe the greatest mode that's ever been in a wrestling game, and I wish they would bring it back in some shape or form. The Streak mode is all about one thing: The Undertaker's streak. Wow, you don't say. You can either play as The Undertaker and try your best to defend your streak for as long as you can in a slobber knocker match until you lose, which GG's if you can make it to 53-0 like I did while recording for this video, because this mode can get pretty challenging. The real main event of this mode though is Defeat the Streak. Defeat the Streak sees you picking anyone from the roster except for The Undertaker obviously, and attempting to beat The Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania. What I love about Defeat the Streak though is that this isn't some easy match where you can just win in a few minutes after hitting 1 or 2 finishers. No, the matches in Defeat the Streak are legitimately challenging and can be a huge pain in the ass to win, especially considering the fact that The Undertaker literally has superpowers in this mode. When you are able to beat him though, it's always super satisfying. Yeah, fuck you, Undertaker! Overall, 30 Years of WrestleMania and the Streak are really solid modes that make 2K14 an even better game than it already is. I feel like these modes help 2K14 in becoming a more memorable wrestling game, because when you think of 2K14, the first things you probably think of are 30 Years of WrestleMania and the Streak. That just goes to show you how good these modes truly were, and unfortunately no other WWE game after this has been able to have a mode that's recaptured the same magic as the Streak in 30 Years of WrestleMania. Will 2K24 be able to make its 40 Years of WrestleMania mode as good as 2K14's 30 Years of WrestleMania mode? I doubt it. Even if 2K24 does manage to be better than 2K14 in that aspect though, there's still one mode 2K14 has that no other WWE game has had since, and it just so happens to be the most requested feature to come back in the new 2K games. That mode, of course, being the WWE Shop. Oh, well then, that means all that's left to talk about is Create a Story. Create a Story is a mode that's loved by just about everyone who's played 2K14 or any of the games before 2K14 that also had the mode. This mode allowed you to make any kind of story you wanted, so while 2K14 didn't have a season mode, you can instead make your own season mode with whatever wacky storylines you can come up with. This is a mode I wish would come back, because I never really got to experience Create a Story to its fullest as a kid, as I just didn't really understand it back then. With all that being said, here's to hoping 2K25 has Create a Story. WWE 2K14 was and still is a great wrestling game. The gameplay is absolutely fantastic. Even today in 2024, the match types are really fun to play. 30 Years of WrestleMania plus the Streak are great side modes. And what the hell am I saying? Just bring Create a Story back, please. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of what is considered to be one of the worst wrestling games of all time. That game being none other than WWE 2K15. This game had a lot of hype surrounding it, as it was the first WWE game to make the shift to next gen, that being Xbox One and PS4 at the time. A lot of people had high expectations for this game to be the absolute best it could be, but when it came out, besides the graphics, which were pretty good for the time, this game really had nothing else going for it. There were no game modes, and barely any match types to actually play. This was a wrestling game with no match types. The career mode, which was the big new addition for 2K15, was an absolute snooze fest. And not to mention, the game was and still is pretty damn buggy. Just look at this. I mean, like, what the fuck is Brock even sitting on in this clip? That was what the next gen version of this game was like. But what if I told you that the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions of WWE 2K15 were actually better than the PS4 and Xbox One versions? WWE 2K15 on the Xbox 360 and PS3 are what I consider to be the forgotten versions of this game due to everybody hyping up the next gen versions so much. When WWE 2K15 released on PS4 and Xbox One, those versions heavily overshadowed the last gen versions despite the next gen versions being, well, pretty terrible. So in this video, I wanted to go ahead and talk about the Xbox 360 version of WWE 2K15 and see just how good it really was compared to the Xbox One version. Also, shout out to my friend Vanikin for buying me the Xbox One version of WWE 2K15 last year. The link to his channel will be in the description if you guys want to help support him. Anyways, without further ado, onto the actual video. Upon starting the game, you'll realize that just based off the main menu alone, this is just WWE 2K14 all over again. I mean, they aren't even trying to hide it. If I'm gonna be honest, this was probably the best thing they could have done though, as 2K14 was an awesome game. Even back in 2015, I didn't see the issue with this game just being 2K14 all over again with an updated roster. Something else you'll notice in this menu is there's actual game modes to play. You got your 2K Showcase, and you also have another mode which is exclusive to these last gen versions called Who Got NXT. I'll talk a bit more about Who Got NXT later in this video, but for now I want to talk about how this game actually plays. When 2K15 came out on next gen, it got a lot of hate due to how slow the gameplay was. The gameplay of the last gen version of 2K15 though is way better in comparison to the next gen version. This is what 2K15 should have been like on next gen. Now sure, the game doesn't look the prettiest due to it being on the Xbox 360, but if I'm gonna be honest, I'm able to put up with slightly worse graphics because the gameplay is fun, and at least for me, that's what matters the most. 2K15 on next gen, on the other hand, looked great, but had pretty bad gameplay. At the end of the day, if I had to choose which version to play just based off the gameplay alone, I definitely picked the 360 version. Certain superstars though just do not look good at all. Take Roman Reigns for example. If you compare how he looks on the 360 version to how he looks in the Xbox One version, it's a night and day difference. Once you actually play the game, you'll realize that it's not just the menu that was the same as it was in 2K14. The gameplay is also the exact same as it was in 2K14. This game really is just 2K14 with an updated roster. The graphics are the exact same, the gameplay is the exact same, but honestly, the gameplay being the same isn't really an issue. The gameplay is fast, responsive, and because of this, matches don't feel like a chore to play through. Plus, because it's the same as 2K14, which was the same as WWE 13, which was pretty much the same as WWE 12, you still have that freedom you had from all those games when it comes to weapons and stuff.
I'm coming for it, boy. I'm coming hard.
When I was playing the 360 version for this video, I was having a blast just fucking around in Extreme Rules matches and seeing what wild spots I could try to pull off. Keyword, try. I swear every time I tried to do a cool spot of some sorts, the AI would somehow find a way to get out of it every single time without fail. I also forgot the last time I played this game, I had the difficulty set to legend, so I was getting my ass kicked pretty hard by the AI. Despite every cool spot I wanted to do getting ruined by the AI, I could at least set up the spots to do them. When I tried to do the same thing in the Xbox One version, I felt extremely limited as to what I could do with weapons. I could only place a table in certain spots. It just wasn't as fun compared to the 360 version. With the last gen versions of this game, not only is the gameplay good unlike the next gen version, also unlike the next gen version, there's actual match types to play. You want to play a special referee match? Go for it. Inferno match? You can do that too. I Quit match? It's there. You also have the Slobber Knocker match, Gauntlet matches, everything that was removed in the next gen version is still here in this last gen version. Now it's time to talk about 2K Showcase. The 2K Showcase was the big new addition to 2K15, and it made it here on last gen. The first 2K Showcase takes you through John Cena and CM Punk's rivalry from the early 2010s, and the second Showcase takes you through Triple H and Shawn Michaels' rivalry from the 2000s. As I said earlier though, this version of the game doesn't really look the prettiest, so a lot of the cutscenes in 2K Showcase can look a little weird at times. Despite the poor visuals though, 2K Showcase is a lot easier to get through in this version because of the faster gameplay. Other than 2K Showcase, there's one more mode called Who Got NXT. As I said earlier in this video, this mode was exclusive to the 360 and PS3 versions of 2K15. This was to make up for the fact that last gen players didn't get the My Career mode the next gen versions got, but who the hell really wants to play 2K15's My Career mode? Anyways, Who Got NXT sees you playing through a bunch of NXT matches and completing different objectives as different NXT superstars from that time. This is honestly a pretty cool addition to these versions of the game, as it gave you something more to do after you finish the showcase. After you finish all the matches in Who Got NXT, you unlock something called Proving Grounds, which sees you taking on none other than Super Cena himself. Proving Grounds is a lot like Defeat the Streak from 2K14, but this time instead of taking on The Undertaker, you're taking on John Cena. This is a normal match too, so you can't rely on weapons or anything like that to make it easier. I will say I do remember this being a lot harder than it was, but when playing it for this video, I ended up beating Cena on Legend difficulty in under 4 minutes. Overall, this game is so much content for honestly what should have been the inferior version of this game at the time. Next gen 2K15 had a lot of hype behind it, only for it to be a complete and utter disappointment on release. The 360 and PS3 versions of this game though really shined as being the superior versions. So that was WWE 2K15 on last gen. Honestly, I have to say this truly is the definitive way to play WWE 2K15 if you really wanted to go back and play it. As I said, the gameplay is still pretty awesome and really enjoyable, and yeah, while the graphics aren't as good, the amount of fun you can have in this version makes up for the less than stellar visuals. If you can find this version of the game at a decent price, I suggest giving it a try. Or don't, I can't really tell you what to do. WWE 2K16, a game I rented all the way back in 2016 from Gamefly, which is somehow still around by the way. Played for about 5 minutes, realized it was just 2K15 with an updated roster, and sent the game back. That was my only experience with WWE 2K16 up until 2021 when I picked up the game again, and honestly, it made me wish I'd given this game more of a shot when I played it originally. Now it is worth noting that the version I played originally was the Xbox 360 version, which dare I say is the best version of this game. Now as much as I'd like to talk about the Xbox 360 version of 2K16, I already talked about 2K15 on last gen and 2K14, and 2K16 on 360 is pretty much just those games with an updated roster. Don't believe me? Try and guess which one of these is WWE 2K16. They're all 2K15. So the version I'll be talking about today is actually the Xbox One version. Is it as good as the 360 version? No. Despite that though, the next gen version of this game isn't terrible. It has some good things to it, like the 2K Showcase, which focused on the career of Stone Cold Steve Austin, the roster, which was pretty decent overall, as well as the gameplay, which was a huge improvement over 2K15. Not to mention the great looking box art, which I still believe is the best looking box art from the 2K series. So with all that out of the way, let's dive into what made WWE 2K16 so awesome. WWE 2K16 was released in October of 2015 and was received much better than 2K15 on launch. 2K16 was a step in the right direction for the WWE 2K series, and it seemed like the series had a bright future ahead of it. Even before 2K16 officially launched, the build up to this game's release was so fucking cool. I remember seeing that commercial with Arnold, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his last name, and just being blown away. That one commercial alone legit had me convinced this was going to be the greatest wrestling game of all time. And because this game was following what many considered to be the worst wrestling game of all time, WWE 2K15, it wasn't going to be that hard for 2K16 to surpass 2K15. Enough about the backstory of this game though, why don't we get into what the actual gameplay of the game is like? Well, I will say, just from the gameplay alone, 2K16 is much better than 2K15. Before 2K17 completely changed up the gameplay formula by adding in a lot of limitations, 2K16 still had a lot of DNA left over from games like WWE 13 and 2K14. The gameplay of 2K16 still felt fast and fluid much like those games did, and while you could tell 2K was still trying to lean towards that slow-paced simulation style gameplay that they were aiming for with 2K15, I don't think it was as egregious in this game. When I play 2K16, I don't have to worry about moving at a snail's pace when I'm just trying to do a basic ass move, or just doing something like walking around the ring. 2K16 felt like a much needed breath of fresh air in the gameplay department. If you feel the gameplay just isn't fast enough, you still have the option to just turn off stamina if you really want to. And again, because this is pre-2K17, you're able to place tables wherever you want and have 5-star classic Extreme Rules matches with no issues. It's obvious 2K heard the complaints about 2K15 when making 2K16, because almost every issue that plagued 15's gameplay is fixed here, which is great to see. Honestly, if 2K19's gameplay wasn't so good, I would say 2K16's gameplay is the definitive gameplay of the 2K series pre-2K22. It's quick, responsive, and just overall really fun. A lot of the stuff that was good about 2K15's gameplay, such as chain wrestling, even carried over into this game, which was pretty cool. Chain wrestling was just a simple minigame at the end of the day, but it did a great job at adding more depth into matches. I still wish the mechanic would make a return to the games nowadays, but unfortunately, I don't think that'll ever happen. Even the new gameplay features that 2K16 added were pretty good, such as the breakout mechanic, which allowed you to run in on your opponent during their entrance. A lot of these mechanics would end up becoming mainstays throughout the rest of the 2K series. This was also the first WWE game to introduce the reversal limit mechanic, which I've never really been a huge fan of. As much as I dislike the reversal limit mechanic though, I do like the fact that it added a bit of strategy, as you actually had to think about when you wanted to reverse a move. Now when it comes to match types, this game really doesn't have a lot to offer. Don't get me wrong though, the match types that are offered in this game are still really fun to play. As I said earlier, Extreme Rules matches are awesome as always. Hell in a Cell matches are actually good in this game because the cell doesn't restrict your movement like it does in the games that would follow this one, and ladder matches are still just as chaotic as always. Now that I've talked about the gameplay and match types, I want to go ahead and talk about the roster, because for what it was worth, it was pretty good in my opinion. We got a lot of Attitude Era stars because of the Stone Cold Showcase, a pretty good mixture of legends and modern superstars, as well as a lot of NXT stars in that time period like Kevin Owens, Finn Balor, Baron Corbin, as well as many others. As I said, the NXT representation was pretty solid, and I loved the Attitude Era stars that were included in the game, such as Ken Shamrock, 2001 Chris Jericho, and Brian Pillman. Now sure, it's not a 100% perfect roster, but I think it got the job done. Also, what other wrestling game lets you play as ECW legend Mikey Whipwreck? Exactly. Oh, and Terminator was in there too, but I mean, whatever. The roster being good is one thing though, but what about the arena selection? Well, thankfully, that's also pretty good. 2K16 doesn't have as many arenas as, let's say, WWE 13, but when it comes to the selection of Attitude Era arenas, 2K16 doesn't hold back. You get arenas like WrestleMania 15, 14, 19, 17, ECW November to Remember, and many, many more. Some of these arenas were also featured in WWE 13, but it was great seeing them playable again, this time in a next-gen WWE game with better graphics. Speaking of graphics, let's talk about the visuals, because this is where the game really shines. WWE 2K16 looks pretty damn good. Everything in this game looks really well polished and overall just looks incredible. Every arena, especially the Attitude Era arenas, looks stunning, and the same can be said for the Superstars as well. Well, some of them anyways. Look, I'm sorry, but that is not The Rock. I absolutely love the way Demon Finn Balor's entrance looks in this game, and I swear Triple H looks great in every WWE game, but in this game especially, he looks damn good. Now that I've talked about the gameplay and all that, it's time to move on to the first of the two big modes featured in this game. That of course being the My Career mode. The My Career mode in 2K16 is just alright. You start off by creating your character before going into your first set of tryout matches in the Performance Center. After that, you get sent to NXT and work your way up to the main roster. Something I really like about this game's My Career mode is you're free to do whatever you want. You're not given any objectives to follow in your matches, so you really feel like you have control over what happens in your career. I don't hate the objective system in the My Career modes of the current games, but coming back to 2K16's My Career, where I can play through each match in the mode without having to worry about completing a bunch of different objectives, is a nice change of pace. The My Career of this game is a hell of a lot better than 2K15's My Career was, and you're sure to get a lot of replay value out of it. Speaking of replay value, let's talk about the second big mode of this game, 2K Showcase. 2K16 was the second WWE 2K game to feature the 2K Showcase as a playable mode, and until 2K19, it was also the last game to feature the mode at all. 2K17 would see the mode locked behind a paywall, and 2K18? Yeah, it didn't have one. After playing through the Showcase though, it's very obvious why they gave up on Showcase after this, because they knew nothing could top this game's Showcase. 2K16 Showcase is still, in my opinion, one of the best showcases we've ever seen in the 2K games. Being able to play through the career of Stone Cold was and still is just the coolest thing ever. The Showcase begins at the 1996 King of the Ring, where Austin gave his infamous 316 speech, and ends with The Rock vs. Austin at WrestleMania 19. Every moment from each match featured in this showcase is recreated with in-game cutscenes, which is always awesome to see. The whole showcase just felt like you were playing through one big documentary focused on Austin's career, and it was actually fun to play, unlike the showcases we have now. Even after you finished the showcase, there were bonus objectives which just added more replay value to the game. Most of the bonus objectives would usually boil down to just having you play as somebody else besides Austin in the showcase matches, which is a really cool way of making the showcase more interesting. All in all, the 2K Showcase in 2K16 is really fun to play through. There's just so many matches and bonus objectives, and none of them feel like a chore to play through. This is a showcase that can last you hours, which is nice because, let's be honest, playing as Stone Cold never gets old, so having a mode that lasts as long as this, focused solely on Austin's career, is pretty awesome. In conclusion, WWE 2K16 was and still is a great WWE game. Is it the greatest WWE game of all time? Far from it, but for what it was certainly a lot of fun. The gameplay was excellent, the showcase was a lot of fun as I mentioned a little bit ago, and the roster was pretty damn good. Sure, the game isn't perfect, there are bugs and glitches here and there, but the main reason I didn't mention that in this video is because I simply just didn't encounter that many while replaying the game. game for this video. If you can find WWE 2K16 for Xbox One or PS4 at a decent price, I highly suggest picking it up because it's worth giving a try. The 360 version is still better though. WWE 2K19 is what many consider to be the best WWE game in the WWE 2K series. And you know what? I agree. 2K19 has always been one of my favorite WWE games, and when you look at what all this game had to offer, it's not hard to see why. 2K19 felt like a culmination of all the previous WWE 2K games at the time, while also adding in new things to make the game feel even bigger. When I say this game was something special, I really mean it. First of all, we had AJ Styles in the cover, which, might I add, is one of the best looking WWE 2K game covers next to 2K16. Secondly, the My Career in this game was a lot of fun to play, and third, this game just had so many modes and fun little gameplay elements that we haven't seen appear in any of the games that followed this. So in this video, I wanted to talk about all of those things and find out what exactly made 2K19 so phenomenal. Released in October of 2018, WWE 2K19 was the follow-up to one of the more mediocre WWE games of the past decade, WWE 2K18. 2K18 is a video for another day, but the point I'm trying to make is that 2K18 didn't have a lot to offer. It lacked a lot of game modes. The gameplay, while improved in some ways compared to the games that came before it, still wasn't all that great. However, with that game, you could see that 2K was starting to go in the right direction, and with 2K19, it felt like they reached that final destination. 2K19 was the absolute peak for the 2K series. Those initial trailers hyped this game up like it was the end-all be-all of wrestling games, not to mention the $1 million tournament that was held to promote the game. The tournament was kinda lame since the guy who won it worked for WWE to begin with, and the whole thing turned out to be rigged. Enough about the backstory of 2K19 though, let's talk about the gameplay. The gameplay of WWE 2K19 is what I would call perfection. Okay, maybe that's slightly over-exaggerated. Obviously, it's not 100% perfect. There are issues here and there, but they're not anything that I would say gets in the way of the fun you can have playing this game. The big thing I love about 2K19's gameplay is just how fast and fluid it feels. When you play this game, you never have to worry about any form of slowdown because matches always keep moving. This was the game where 2K finally realized that not everyone is a fan of the simulation-based gameplay from 2K15 through 18, and because of that, for 2K19, they actually switched up the gameplay formula. This game still has simulation elements to it, like stamina, the Hell in a Cell restricting your movement, and the fact that you can only place weapons in certain spots, but everything else is more so similar to the arcade-style gameplay that we were used to from games like 2K14. This game really just said fuck it and let you do whatever the hell you wanted. If you wanted to superplex your opponent onto a set of ladders in the ring, nothing is stopping you from doing so. Just look at what I did to Seth Rollins in this match. I mean, I was genuinely convinced that Seth had fucking died. Outside of some of the awesome things this game let you do, the actual wrestling part of the game is really fun as well. Every move feels smooth, and the striking is nice and quick, which greatly improves the pace of matches. The chain wrestling minigame also makes an appearance here, but it feels much faster and more streamlined in this game compared to how it felt in 2K16 or any of the other games that featured it. I still stand by what I said in my 2K16 video though when I said chain wrestling is a great mechanic. It keeps matches moving and adds something for you to do in between each big moment of a match. Now, while there are some limitations in the gameplay, as I mentioned with weapons for example, there's still just enough freedom for you to do things like putting your opponent through a flaming table as well as doing crazy dives off a ladder. This game also gave you the ability to brawl around the arena, which includes the ability to go backstage in the middle of a match, which is a really awesome feature. Speaking of backstage, the backstage brawls in this game are on another level. When you're backstage, there's so many interactive elements for you to play with. A forklift, a production truck, a fucking fire extinguisher. Nothing feels like it's off limits. Hell, you can even go to catering and just start chucking shit off the tables. Of course, Extreme Rules matches are still a lot of fun, and in this game, they're probably the best they've ever been. Weapons in this game hit like a fucking truck. When you hit someone with a chair, you can really feel the impact of it, which makes it all the more devastating. Now, something I really thought improved the gameplay of 2K19 a lot was the payback system. Essentially, paybacks were just little perks you could add to whatever superstar you wanted to play as. Some of the paybacks included Poison Mist, which let you spray a mist at your opponent during the match, Blackout, which let you appear behind your opponent, and even one that instantly gives you a finisher. The paybacks are obviously still around in the new games like 2K24, but back then, paybacks were a pretty big deal since they were brand new. Paybacks were just yet another reason 2K19's gameplay was as fun as it was, and I'm glad 2K kept them around for the later games. That's not all though, because there's one more thing 2K19 had that made the game even better. Big Head Mode. This is still one of the greatest features I've ever seen in a wrestling game. Now yeah, it doesn't really change the gameplay or anything, but it's dumb stuff like this that can make a game feel more fun. This is what I meant by this game leaned more into the arcade style gameplay because it took risks. It added dumb stuff like Big Head Mode and even blocky Minecraft-like models, which 2K really didn't have to add, but they added more value and fun of the game, so they did. With that being said, that's really all there is to say about the gameplay of 2K19. It goes without saying that 2K19 definitely has the best gameplay out of all the WWE 2K games from the Xbox One and PS4 generation. Now that I've established just how great the gameplay is, I now want to talk about everything else this game has to offer. Now talking about the roster, I'm just gonna say it, 2K19 is one of the best rosters of all time. In the base roster, we got 2010 Batista, 1998, as well as 1991 Undertaker, Diamond Dallas Page, and 2003 John Cena, just to name a few. The roster was already stacked to begin with, but then you factor in the DLC and the roster just becomes even better. If you bought some of the DLC for this game, you get Ronda Rousey, Rey Mysterio, Roddy Piper, and even 1985 Dusty Rhodes. Unfortunately, the DLC can't be purchased anymore unless you somehow track down a brand new still sealed copy of the deluxe edition, which had the DLC included, but good luck trying to do that. All in all, the roster in this game was all around excellent. Unfortunately though, the arena selection isn't quite as impressive. Somehow this game offers less than even 2K14 did in terms of arenas, but hey, at least we got WrestleMania 33 as a playable arena. Look, the arenas featured here, while they're not horrible, just aren't enough. There's hardly any throwback arenas featured in this game. We barely got any Ruthless Aggression era arenas, and barely got any Attitude era arenas, if any at all. And even worse, the one Ruthless Aggression arena we did get was fucking Velocity. Ah yes, Velocity, everyone's favorite show from the Ruthless Aggression era. Really, when it comes to the arena selection, the lack of arenas is my only real complaint. Honestly, I feel it's very easy to make do with what's featured in this game, and if a certain arena isn't in the game, you still have that option of making one yourself, which is nice. Overall though, the roster is pretty fantastic, and the arena selection, while lacking, is fine and doesn't really bring the game down all that much. Now it's time to talk about some of the extra modes featured in this game, because this game just went all in with the extra content. This was the game that introduced 2K Towers, which was such a cool game mode. Essentially, 2K Towers would see you competing in a number of different matches and towers of different themes. There was a Legends Tower where you face legends, and even a tower where you could unlock a gold AJ Styles, which unfortunately seems to be removed from the game completely. 2K Towers was such a unique game mode, and it's definitely something I'd love to see come back. Another mode that was pretty awesome in this game was My Career. This is the only My Career I've actually fully played through in a WWE game. The My Career in this game had a pretty engaging and entertaining story, even featuring full voice acting, which was pretty cool. It worked like any other My Career where you first create a superstar to use in the mode, but instead of getting sent to the Performance Center and working your way up on your own, this game had its own story where you started in an indie promotion called called BCW, and from there you get scouted and find your way into WWE. In total, there's 15 chapters, and the best part is, after you finish the mode, it's infinitely replayable. If you haven't yet checked out 2K19's My Career, I really recommend giving it a playthrough because it's a lot of fun. The last mode I want to talk about is 2K Showcase, which this time around is focused on the career of Daniel Bryan. The showcase takes you through most of Bryan's career from his WWE debut of Velocity in 2003 to his crowning achievement of winning the world title at WrestleMania 30. While I wouldn't say it's my favorite showcase we've ever had, I still think it's better than the showcases we've been getting as of recent in the newer games. All in all, WWE 2K19 is truly a phenomenal wrestling game. While I covered 99% of the great things that this game had going for it, I still left some things out which speaks volumes about how much content this game had. Some of those things include the fact that you can play as a zombie Triple H, and that this game introduced the ability for you to create your own custom Money in the Bank briefcase. Now unfortunately, 2K19 has been delisted from all digital stores, which sucks, but if you can find a physical copy of the game, I highly suggest picking it up because even in 2024, this game is still a must play. Also, 2K19 is 6 years old now. Fuck, I'm getting old. In 2019, 2K released one of the worst wrestling games of all time in the form of WWE 2K20. 2K20 was an absolute disaster of a game, and with that, it became pretty obvious that something needed to change if the WWE 2K series wanted to keep going. The series had always been full of ups and downs from 2014 to 2019, but 2K20 was a disaster beyond anything that the series had ever seen before. As a result of 2K20's disastrous release, it was announced in 2020 that a 2K21 wouldn't be happening. Rather, Visual Concepts would get an extra year of development time to work on the next installment of the WWE 2K series. Well, 2K21 may have gotten cancelled, but it could have been worse. We could have gotten a shitty WWE Allstars knockoff instead. You gotta be fucking kidding me. Fast forward to 2021, and after having spent most of that year playing 2K19 and not 2K Battlegrounds, it all came to a head at that year's WrestleMania when the next WWE 2K game was officially announced. That was also the day I realized my WWE 2K collection would forever look terrible on my shelf.
Hey man, that's a nice collection you got here. It's pretty impressive, but where's 2K21?
Get the fuck out. Now, the initial trailer for WWE 2K22 didn't show us a whole lot. I mean, hell, all we saw was Rey Mysterio hitting a 619 on Cesaro, but I think the trailer did a pretty good job of conveying that the game was shaping up to be much better than 2K20. Even the tagline for the game was "It hits different," implying that the game was going to be a pretty huge deal. Now, as the year went on and we'd start to see more and more gameplay and screenshots, it became pretty obvious that 2K22 was going to be nothing like we were used to. Fast forward to 2022 when the game launched, and man, it was so good. Released in March of 2022, WWE 2K22 more or less served as a reboot of the WWE 2K series, as everything we once knew about the games was thrown out the window in this one. Everything from the gameplay to the graphics and presentation was completely reworked for 2K22, and you can really tell that 2K and Visual Concepts learned a lot from the disaster that was 2K20. WWE 2K22 just had so many good things going for it. For instance, the new and improved gameplay felt buttery smooth and incredibly fun, the overhauled graphics were full of detail, and the game was centered around Rey Mysterio, which was awesome. Speaking of Rey, this cover art is absolutely incredible. I absolutely love what they did for 2K22's cover art, as it goes for this artistic approach that I feel has always been missing from the 2K game's cover art. I've always preferred the more stylized approach from games like WWE 12 and 13 compared to the 2K game's approach, which would always just feature the superstar placed in front of a logo and nothing more. With all that out of the way though, I think it's time we finally take a look at WWE 2K22 and find out what exactly made it so great. Before I get into everything else 2K22 has to offer, I first want to talk about the gameplay because, wow, the gameplay in this game felt like a pretty huge upgrade from what we were used to with the previous 2K games. I remember playing 2K22 for the first time at launch and just being blown away by how fun the gameplay was. The gameplay of 2K22 is the perfect balance of the arcade and simulation style gameplay, as it manages to feel fast-paced and fluid while also maintaining that simulation feel at the same time. time. The big thing that made this game's gameplay so fun was the introduction of the combo system. You could pull off light combos, heavy combos, and even grapple combos, which really added a lot of depth to the gameplay. Along with combos came the addition of breaker moves, which basically served as a way of breaking up someone's combo to get out of it easier. The breaker moves do a really good job of shaking things up since you have to make your combos more unpredictable to prevent your opponent from pulling one off. Each superstar has their own unique combos, and I think that's really what makes the gameplay feel so fun. Every superstar feels different and plays differently from one another. It actually gives you a reason to want to try out different superstars just to see how they play. I think what I love the most about the gameplay of 2K22 though is the fact that it brought back the freedom of the older games. This was the game where they finally got rid of the awful strict weapon placement system from 2K17 through 2K20 and just allowed you to place tables and ladders wherever you wanted. It feels so nice to be able to set up spots the way I want to without the game telling me that I have to place a table or a ladder in a specific spot. Extreme Rules matches in this game are a ton of fun because of the freedom this game gives you. They even added in 2 new weapons in the form of the stop sign and the hockey stick, which is pretty awesome. Another thing that made 2K22's gameplay so great was the addition of the stun meter, which once full allows you to just beat the shit out of your opponent and not have to worry about them reversing or getting out of it. It's honestly a pretty cool mechanic, and it's the little things like this that I feel significantly improve the gameplay experience and make it a lot more fun. Honestly though, that's about it as far as the gameplay goes. 2K22's gameplay, while simple, was still fun enough to give me 162 hours of fun and enjoyment. As I said, it's got that arcade feel to it, which I absolutely love, but it also has those simulation elements to it for the people that enjoy that. Enough about the gameplay though, how about we move on to the roster? Now before 2K22 even released, WWE released a shit ton of people from the roster, which had me worried that the final roster for 2K22 was gonna suffer as a result. Thankfully though, the roster ended up being pretty damn good. This game featured the likes of China, Jim the Anvil, Neidhart, and so many other iconic legends and superstars. The already stacked roster got even better though with the DLC. I genuinely believe that the DLC for wrestling games peaked with this game because holy shit, LA Knight, 3 versions of The Undertaker, The Boogeyman, Doink the Clown, and even Yokozuna. Oh, and Machine Gun Kelly was DLC too. But who the hell cares? They made Mr. T DLC. Now you can't talk about the DLC in 2K22 without mentioning the incredible NWO DLC pack since that gave you Eric Bischoff, a whole new arena, and of course the NWO versions of Hogan, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and X-Pac. Also, if you've ever wanted a wrestling game with 8 versions of Rey Mysterio, this game has you covered. Seriously, the fact that I can do an 8-man match with all the Rey Mysterios featured in this game is insane. Thing is though, I wish these would have just been alternate attires rather than each version of Rey being made into their own separate character. What makes it all the more confusing is that some of the attires are alt attires for certain versions of Rey. For instance, 09 Rey has a 2010 alt attire, yet 2011 Rey is its own separate character. 2K, what the hell were you thinking? You know, never in my life did I think I'd be getting paid to bitch about Rey Mysterio attires in a wrestling game, but here we are. As good as everything I just talked about is though, the one thing that I feel really made this game as great as it was the addition of custom renders. This is by far one of the greatest features we've ever gotten in a wrestling game, and it's thanks to this game that we even have it in the first place. Being able to upload custom renders for your CAWs is just awesome, and it allows for your custom superstars to fit in more easily with the rest of the roster. Plus, you could upload whatever image you wanted, so sometimes you'd have a pretty normal looking render like this, and then sometimes you'd end up getting a render like this. What the fuck? Moving on to the match types, these were the same match types that we had gotten since 2K18. There were no new match types added with this game, which honestly kind of sucked. I would have hoped for at least one new match type with this being a reboot of the series and all, but while they didn't add any new match types, I will say they did at least update a few to make them more fun. I already talked a bit about how Extreme Rules matches were made more fun in this game due to the lack of restrictions on weapon placement, but something I didn't talk about was the updated backstage brawls. Now I'm going to be honest, as much as I enjoy the backstage brawls in this game with the all-new balcony that you can throw your opponent off of, I will admit I do miss the backstage brawl that was in 2K19 and 2K20, since those allowed you to free roam and go wherever you wanted backstage. Now yes, they've made this backstage area better in 2K23 and 24, but in 22, this area just didn't have a whole lot going for it. It was very bare bones and lacked the interactivity of the backstage brawl areas in the previous games. Moving on to the arena selection, I will say, while it's not horrible, it is lacking in a lot of ways. First of all, there's hardly any Attitude Era arenas. Most of the arena selection Attitude Era wise consists of WCW arenas, which is fine. If you're gonna do WCW arenas, at least throw in a 1997 Raw arena to balance it out or something. I do like the fact that we got a few Ruthless Aggression arenas in the game, like the WrestleMania 21 and 2005 Raw arenas, but other than that, there's not a whole lot on offer here. As I said, it's not horrible, it's just fine. It gets the job done, and the arena selection could have been much worse. As lacking as the arena selection is though, you can at least use the Thunderdome for some arenas, so at least it has that going for it. Well, now that I've talked about the gameplay and whatnot, I think it's time we talk about the extra modes 2K22 had on offer, starting with My Faction. Well, since I can't talk about My Faction, let's take a look at a mode that actually works. That, of course, being Showcase Mode. When it was announced that this game's 2K Showcase was going to be centered around Rey Mysterio, I was honestly pretty excited. Then the game came out, and I was left disappointed. The Showcase in this game is legitimately the most underwhelming part of the whole game, and it sucks because it could have been a lot better. I like a lot of the matches that are on offer in the mode, and I love the fact that it's not overly long. The main problem I have with it though is that it just doesn't feature entrances at all. There's no commentary, instead it's replaced with this shitty orchestral non-copyright royalty free music, and all the matches are bogged down by slingshot technology. Essentially all slingshot tech does is splice real footage of the match in with the in-game cutscenes, and it completely ruins each match. Honestly, slingshot tech just looks pretty pathetic when you compare it to something like the fully animated cutscenes from the Attitude Era mode in WWE 13 from 2012. Hell, even Visual Concepts themselves had fully animated cutscenes for each match in the 4 Horsewomen Showcase in 2K20. If I want to watch the actual match, I just go on Peacock and watch it there. This is a wrestling video game, not the WWE Network. Moving on to Universe Mode, yeah, it's about what you would expect. Make and run your own shows the way you want them to be. It's pretty much the same exact Universe Mode that has gone unchanged for years. They did add Superstar Mode though, which allows you to pick a superstar and focus on just them throughout the Universe Mode. And much like the normal Universe Mode, Superstar Mode can get boring pretty quickly. Not talking about My Career or My Rise as they call it in this game, it's fine. I know I've said before that I enjoy when a My Career has a set story for you to follow, but I don't know, man. This game's story for the My Career just never really hooked me. This game was the first to offer both a women's and men's My Career path, which was cool to see, but like I said, they just never really hooked me. The My Career does at least have voice acting, but the problem is that the story is just not very engaging. The game gives you a list of different stories and paths you can go down, but none of them really connect to each other. It honestly just feels like a checklist of things to do rather than an actual story. And with that brings us to the last mode there is to talk about, which happened to be the big new addition to 2K22, GM Mode. What the hell happened here? GM Mode for the longest time has always been one of the most requested modes to make a return in the WWE games after it was removed in SVR09, and when they finally brought it back for 2K22, it was just okay. It wasn't nearly as good as people expected it to be, and for being a modern reincarnation of GM Mode, it was pretty pathetic. There just wasn't a whole lot to do in it. It lacked a lot of the depth that even the GM Mode in SVR07 had. This game's GM Mode never featured mid-card titles either, which is just insane, and the mode as a whole just felt bland. As barren as the mode is though, I will at least say that I am glad they brought it back for this game. They didn't need to bring back GM Mode, but they did anyways, and it showed they were at least listening to us. All in all, the extra modes is where 2K22 just kind of takes a nosedive, as they really don't offer anything all that special. They're fine, they get the job done, and knowing now just how much they expanded on all these modes in 23 and 24, it's pretty easy to just excuse all of these as starting points for what would come later. Overall, WWE 2K22 was a pretty damn good WWE game for what it was worth. Sure, the modes might not have been all that great, and they might not have added any new match types to the game, but I think Visual Concepts at least deserves some credit for the incredible work they did on this game. You have to admit, this game was a hell of a lot better than what we got with 2K20, and I think the improvements made with the gameplay alone was enough to cement this game as one of the greats. Now, is it as good as Rumble Roses? No. WWE 2K24 might just be the greatest wrestling game I've ever played. This game has it all. A roster, arenas, slim gyms. I mean, what more could you ask for from a wrestling game? WWE 2K24 was released, last week actually. Damn, I'm late. Anyway, since 2K24 came out, I've spent quite a bit of time playing it, and I gotta say, it's pretty damn good. 2K24 is probably the best WWE game we've had in a while, but as good as it is, it's definitely not perfect. Is the game better than 2K22 and 23? Yeah, but is it better than 2K14? Yes and no. Despite that though, I still think 2K24 is another step in the right direction for the WWE 2K series. So with that being said, I want to talk about the good as well as the bad of WWE 2K24 so you can decide whether it's worth picking up or not. Starting with the gameplay of 2K24 is almost identical to 2K23 and even 22. However, there have been some pretty great quality of life changes made that help 2K24 feel a lot more different when compared to 23 and 22. The biggest improvement to the gameplay has to be the new Trading Blows minigame. This minigame makes matches way more interesting and really adds to the fun. All it is at the end of the day is a really simple button pressing minigame, but it works really well and it's a welcome addition to the game. Along with Trading Blows, you're also able to throw weapons now, and it's just as fun as you can imagine. You can throw everything from chairs, ladders, to even the steel steps, or even a Slim Jim if you feel like it. There's nothing more fun than being a special referee and throwing a Slim Jim at the head of one of the competitors in the match. Honestly, I think I'd say that 2K24 might be as good as 2K14 when it comes to the gameplay. If you want that fast-paced, arcade-style gameplay, you can get that from 2K24. Granted, you may have to adjust your sliders a bit as well as turn on infinite stamina, but once you do that, 2K24's gameplay will speed up drastically. Not only does 2K24 do the arcade style gameplay well, but in my opinion it really nails the simulation style gameplay as well. The biggest improvement to the simulation style gameplay has to be the addition of new tired moves. When you're out of stamina and hit a finisher or a signature, you'll end up collapsing onto the floor, which is just awesome. This makes matches feel a lot more real and makes them more fun overall. This game just gives you a lot of freedom, especially in Extreme Rules matches. This game really brings back a lot of the freedom that you had in games like 2K14 or 2K15 on last gen. Just look at some of the things I did in this match against The Undertaker. The arena felt like one big sandbox where I could do anything I wanted. I could do a dive off a ladder set up on the stage to The Undertaker, who is lying on a table off the stage. I also did a triple threat with AJ Styles, RVD, and Seth Rollins, and by the end of the match, it looked like an absolute bloodbath. This is by far the most fun I've had playing a wrestling game since I had to replay 2K14 2 weeks ago for the video I made on it, which you should check out by the way. Along with Trading Blows, there have also been other quality of life improvements made to the game, such as being able to climb on top of announce tables, blood actually dripping onto the ring mat and outside of the ring, and even having the ability to have the camera face the ramp to make the game look more like Here Comes the Pain. While these may not be massive changes, they're just little improvements and changes that make the game feel a lot better in my opinion. The presentation has also been improved this year with new camera angles during entrances as well as more camera flashes during big moves. Both of these things, while small, are nice quality of life improvements that really make the presentation feel more authentic. Another thing is that visually this game looks absolutely fantastic. Every superstar as well as their entrances look phenomenal. There's not a single entrance or character model I've seen in this game as of yet that it hasn't looked incredible. In terms of match types, the same ones still remain from 2K23 and 2K22, but we did get 3 new match types this year, those being Casket, Ambulance, and Special Guest Referee. The biggest one by far being Special Referee. People have been begging for years for Special Referee to come back to the games, and we finally finally got it back in 2K24. Thank you, 2K. Special guest referee is a lot of fun. It's pretty much exactly the same as how it was in 2K14. You can either play like an actual referee or just go wild and break the rules. Cover him, Sean! Cover him! Go for it! 1, 2, 3. It's over. You want to screw someone over? Go for it. Throw a Slim Jim at one of the competitors? You're the referee. Who's gonna stop you? As I mentioned earlier, along with special referee, the casket and ambulance matches have also been added as playable game modes. They play pretty much the exact same, which might be a negative for some, but I mean the ambulance and casket match being in the game is good enough for me. Despite them playing relatively similar to each other though, they're both really fun in their own right. Overall, the gameplay of 2K24 is pretty great, and with all the quality of life improvements made this year, it feels like a pretty solid improvement over 23 and 22. If you skip 23 because of it looking too similar to 2K22, I really think you'll enjoy 24 because the gameplay is way different. Now talking about the roster, while this isn't the greatest roster we've ever had in a WWE game, it's definitely pretty good. This year's roster gives us 200 plus superstars and legends, and with the DLC coming out later this year, this roster is guaranteed to get even better. The arena selection is also pretty great, but I feel like it's not as great as it could be. Because we only got 17 WrestleMania arenas from the 40 years of WrestleMania showcase, which I'll talk more about later, we're really missing out when it comes to the other Mania arenas. Sure, we're gonna get WrestleMania 40 post-launch, but that doesn't make up for the fact that we don't even have WrestleMania 1 as a playable arena in the game. How are you gonna make a 40 years of WrestleMania mode and not include WrestleMania 1? 2K14 had 30 WrestleMania arenas if you include the WrestleMania 30 concept arena. This game only has 17. No WrestleMania 2, no WrestleMania 14, not even WrestleMania 28. Even with the lack of Mania arenas though, the arena selection as it is fine. It's not horrible by any means, I just wish we had more Mania arenas in the game. The Manias that are in the game though look absolutely fantastic. WrestleMania 30 looks beautiful, and even with the lack of shadows on the daytime version of WrestleMania 31 on the PC version of the game, Mania 31 looks stunning in this game. Don't ask why the shadows are missing because I have no idea. As good as the arenas are though, they could definitely use more Slim Jim logos. Moving on to the side modes in this game, I first want to talk about Showcase because this might just be the worst showcase I have ever played in a WWE game. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, this mode completely blue balls us on how many WrestleMania arenas we get from this mode. Second, there's only 21 WrestleMania matches, already off to a bad start. Third, the AI in all these matches is absolutely ridiculous. They can put you in a submission hold and just like that, you're done. Fourth, the objectives are so goddamn tedious and annoying. Brock vs. Taker at WrestleMania 30 asks you to hit over 13 German suplexes in total, which is just super tedious and time consuming. The worst part about this showcase though has to be slingshot technology. Fuck slingshot tech. This absolutely ruins the mode. All slingshot tech does is create transitions from in-game cutscenes to clips of the actual match. I swear most of my playthrough from this mode was just me watching the actual matches rather than playing them. The Rock vs. Stone Cold at WrestleMania 17 had you playing for like a total of 5 to 6 minutes, and the rest of it was just footage of the actual match. This mode felt more like the WWE Network than actually something I could play. Most of these matches don't even let you play the finish of the match, as the finish happens in the real footage. Not only that, but the matches don't even feature commentary either. Instead, we have royalty-free orchestra music playing over each match, which is just lame. Speaking of lame, let's talk about my faction. If I'm being honest, my faction this year is actually pretty good. I'm not a big My Faction guy, but from what I've played of it so far, I might actually try and get into it more this year. Essentially, My Faction is just a mode where you set up a faction using cards of superstars, compete in weekly towers, and unlock more and more shit to upgrade your faction. Now don't get me wrong, My Faction is still not perfect, there's still microtransactions, but there have been a lot of improvements made to the mode to make it more enjoyable this year. The biggest improvement to My Faction faction is the addition of persona cards, which are cards that once unlocked allow you to use whatever character the card is for outside of my faction, which is something people have been asking for since 2K22. Honestly, there's not much else I can really say about my faction, as like I said, I'm not really a big my faction guy. Something I can talk about though is my rise. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, because 2K decided to enlist 2 of the DLCs from Steam last week, I lost all my rise progress. All you need to know though is that my rise is pretty similar to 23's and 22's my rise, but actually has more intriguing stories this year for both the men's my rise and the women's my rise. I will be streaming my playthrough of the men's my rise over the course of the next few days, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that. In conclusion, 2K24 is almost perfect, and I mostly blame that on the showcase. If showcase had just been a little better, this game would have been 100% perfect in my opinion. Besides showcase though, the rest of the game is absolutely fantastic. There's still so much I didn't talk about, such as an updated creation suite, as well as the addition of create a sign. On top of all that, my GM and universe mode have also been slightly improved this year, which is great to see. This game is so much content and it's just a lot of fun to play. I mean, you can even play as the action figures of John Cena and Cody Rhodes, which is pretty fucking awesome. I will say though that this game really makes me want to give Slim Jims a try. Did Slim Jim write this damn script or something? WWE 2K25. What do I think of it, you may ask? It stinks. Okay, maybe that's a bit of an overstatement. It's not that bad. Now, if this game had an island that didn't work and was only added to give the illusion of more content while also shoving microtransactions down the throat of the consumer, then I would say the game is bad. Son of a bitch. After being released about a week ago, I've spent just about 50 hours playing WWE 2K25, and I gotta say, while I do genuinely really like this game, it does have its fair share of problems, which of course I will talk about later. The island. Everything that the game does get right though really makes this game feel like a huge improvement over last year's game. From the showcase to the my rise, everything feels like it's been more refined and well thought out this time around, which is always nice to see. With all that being said though, I think it's time we take a look at everything WWE 2K25 has to offer, starting with the most fun part of the game, the gameplay. At its core, WWE 2K25 plays damn near the exact same as 22, 23, and 24. To put it simply, if you enjoyed how those games played, you're 100% going to enjoy this game as well. It's got the same arcade style gameplay that those games had, along with the more simulation style elements as well, which is to be expected. As far as the core gameplay goes, everything has remained about the same as it was in the previous games, but there have been a few changes to improve the gameplay a bit. For instance, there's the return of chain wrestling, which at the end of the day, while it is almost identical to how it was in the older games like 2K19, visual concepts did make some changes to it to make the feature feel more fresh. For example, now you're able to choose what exactly you want to do upon winning the chain struggle, like striking your opponent or driving them to the ropes. Chain wrestling has always been a long requested feature to come back in the modern games, and I'm pretty glad to see it back here in 2K25, as it honestly works pretty well. Chain wrestling combined with the trading blows minigame honestly does a lot to make matches feel more immersive and fun, which is a huge reason why I love the fact that it's included in this game. Speaking of things making matches feel more immersive, another big addition to this game is the new camera angles during entrances and matches. Being able to use the new third-person camera perspective as well as the free cam in entrances and matches is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a wrestling game. These new camera angles do so much to not only make matches feel more interesting and exciting, but make entrances feel far less repetitive, as you're able to freely control the camera angles and control the overall presentation of a superstar's entrance. This is a feature that I honestly didn't even know I wanted, but now that it's a thing, I absolutely love it. You know what else I love about this game's gameplay? The fact that it gives you an insane amount of freedom to do whatever the hell you want. This is a wrestling game where you can chuck a giant bottle of Prime at your opponent and then immediately after beat them over the head with a light tube. On top of that, you can even do intergender matches this year, which really goes to show how far they went into making sure that the gameplay this year had as little restrictions as possible. Unless, of course, it's the special referee match, in which case the option to disable the referee meter is just blanked out for some reason, making special referee matches feel severely handicapped as a result. Come on 2K, special referee matches were the best part of 2K24. What the hell happened here? Sure, it's probably just a bug, but it's still pretty disappointing when the match that a lot of people were looking forward to playing just doesn't let them play it the way they want to. Speaking of which, we might as well talk about match types, because this game did introduce a few new ones that are actually a lot of fun to play. The first big match type is of course the one everyone was most excited to play in this game, the Bloodline Rules match. This honestly honestly has to be one of the most fun match types I've ever played in a wrestling game because of how unpredictable it is. You could be getting your ass absolutely handed to you, and then all of a sudden one of your allies runs out to save you, but your opponent calls someone else in immediately after. Then of course there's the underground match, which is pretty much just a normal match, except the ring has no ropes and there's a crowd of people surrounding the ring. It's okay, I mean it's nothing I'm necessarily clamoring for, but it gets the job done. I do like the fact that you can do this match in any arena though, which is nice. If you happen to get bored of either of those match types though, well then you're in luck, because Visual Concepts added in 2 new backstage brawl arenas which are just as fun in their own right. The first and best one in my opinion is the WWE Archive, since it's filled with so many little Easter eggs and references to stuff from WWE's history, and the other one is just the NXT parking lot, which is fine, but when compared to the WWE Archives, I really don't find it to be quite as fun. Moving on to the roster, if I'm being honest, it's not half bad. Sure, it's lacking a lot of notable superstars, and even some that were in 2K24, like 2009 Undertaker, but for the most part, I feel like it gets the job done. What I don't like though is how half the fucking roster is locked behind my faction. Now I need to make it clear that not all of the superstars are locked behind my faction, as some are locked behind My Rise and Showcase, which I can at least tolerate since those modes are so simple to play through, but the ones locked behind my faction are just ridiculous. The amount of hours I had to pour into my faction just to unlock 2010 CM Punk is insane, and even then, while 2010 CM Punk has This Fire Burns as his theme song, he still has the same damn trons as modern CM Punk. So what the hell was the point in putting 2010 Punk in the game and making him a pain in the ass to unlock if you weren't gonna give him his own tron? Outside of those problems, the roster is overall pretty good, with it being almost the exact same as it was last year. The same cannot be said, however, for this arena selection, because seriously, what the fuck is this? Now, don't get me wrong, it's not awful, but I mean, a lot of these arenas are just ones that I would never want to use. Super Showdown, Tribute to the Troops 2023, and why the hell are both versions of WrestleMania 31 locked when they were already unlockables last year in 2K24? Like I said, the arena selection isn't awful, but I mean, half of it's taken up by My Rise unlockables like the WrestleMania and Survivor Series arenas from the mode, as well as arenas that don't even make sense being included, like the one I mentioned a little bit ago, Tribute to the Troops 2023. I do like that we at least get the current form of Raw and SmackDown as playable arenas though, so I mean I guess that counts for something, I suppose. Overall, I gotta say, while the arena selection does leave much to be desired, the rest of the core game is honestly pretty damn good. The gameplay, as I said earlier, while pretty much the exact same as the games that came before it, still has enough of its own unique features like chain wrestling and even visual body damage to make it feel fresh, fun, and exciting. You know what's not fun though? Some of the other modes this game has to offer, which leads me into the next thing I want to talk about, the island. The island fucking sucks. This might be the worst mode I've ever played in a video game in general, and believe me, I wanted to like it. While everyone was shitting on the mode before the game even released, I was in that small group of people that legitimately wanted the mode to be more than just a blatant cash grab, and even if that's all it would end up being, spoiler alert, it was, I was still willing to give it a shot because I believed there would still be that chance that the mode would be fun. Well, fast forward to when the game released. Oh my god, this might be the worst lag I've ever seen in a video game, and I could not have been more wrong. The island is pretty much just a hub world, allowing you to level up your custom wrestler while doing various quests and playing through online matches. First of all, we might as well address the biggest issue, and that's the fact that this mode absolutely ruined the overall creation suite, as a good majority of items and even hairstyles are locked behind this mode. Not only that, but the items in the island are separated by gender, meaning if you buy an item in the island for a male superstar, you won't be able to use it on a female superstar and vice versa. This is undoubtedly one of the biggest middle fingers to all the creators out there, as now if they want to make their superstars the way they want them to, they may get to a point where they need to end up spending money on the island, a mode they may never actually play or have any interest in, just to get a specific item for their CEW, and that's just terrible if you ask me. Even worse is that cross-platform community creations between old gen and next gen got split in half for some reason, which makes zero 0 sense, meaning if you're playing on PC or old gen, you just can't access anything uploaded on community creations from anybody on Series X and PS5. That's stupid. Then on top of that, there's the fact that despite the game being brand new, the island is already dead, with queues for matches often taking 5 minutes or longer, and for a mode that was this hyped up, that's just pretty sad if you ask me. It's very obvious no one likes this mode, and why 2K decided it'd be a good idea to include is beyond me. Obviously it was for money, but even then, I really don't think this mode is going to be that successful in the long run anyways, so what's the point? While we're on the topic of blatant cash grabs, we might as well talk about everyone's favorite punching bag of a mode as of late, My Faction. My Faction this year is about the same as it was in previous games in a sense that it still functions the exact same way. It's still the same card-based mode built upon microtransactions that everyone knows and hates. I will say though, as bad as the mode is, it does have one saving grace, and that's the all new World Tour mode. This mode is honestly the best part about My Faction for me, because it's the only part of the mode that doesn't feel like it's constantly telling me to spend more money than I really need to. Essentially, the mode lets you tour, quote unquote, various regions, and allows you to play through a series of matches in each part of whatever region you're currently competing in. Playing through each tour in each region will always net you a good amount of rewards, which is nice, and it's fairly easy to get through too. Sure, it does take a good couple of hours, especially if you're going for 2010 CM Punk like I was, but I mean overall, it's not a bad mode. The other parts of My Faction though still suck ass, of course. Fuck My Faction. The other big mode this game has to offer is, of course, as usual, the 2K Showcase, and would you believe me if I told you it's actually somewhat decent this year? Now don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, as some of those matches did not feel like they were even remotely tested before release, and my god, some of those timed objectives were a huge pain in the ass. But for what it's worth, it's not half bad. It's leagues better than 2K22 through 2K24 showcases, as this year's showcase not only includes full entrances and commentary, but full-blown in-game cutscenes as well, which is what I and many others have been asking for years now. The showcase this year, of course, focuses on the Bloodline Dynasty, and I mean the opening alone, which lets you play through the very end of Cody versus Roman at WrestleMania 40, does a great job to get you hooked right from the jump. For the first time in forever, I can confidently say that this year's showcase is legitimately worth playing. Next up is My Rise, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed it this year. The My Rise in the past few games have never done much to really keep me engaged, as they always just felt slapped together and never really amounted to much. This year though, they actually give you a more cohesive story to play through, similar to 2K19's My Career. You can even continue playing the mode after you finish the story, or even replay it multiple times in a New Game Plus sort of style, where you get to keep all your stats and everything, which is really nice. Now I don't want to say too much to avoid spoilers for any of you out there who are planning on playing My Rise this year, but all I will say is that if you enjoyed the way 2K19 handled its My Career, and you enjoy the more story-focused career modes, then I really recommend giving this game's My Rise a try. As for the other modes like GM mode and Universe mode, they've both gotten improvements which do enhance the overall experience of both. For example, in Universe mode, promos are finally back, and I mean they're fine, they work, but I mean outside of that, it's still the same old Universe mode that I refuse to get into, as I just have zero interest in it. They do also give you the option to make shows span across multiple days, which is a nice addition, but why did it take this many years for these types of changes to be made to the mode? I mean, after we got Superstar mode added to Universe in 2K22, we got nothing new after that. Universe in this game is definitely better than it was in the past few games, but I mean, to be honest, that's not really saying much when the mode hasn't had much of anything done to it over the years. Then in GM mode, there's the addition of cross-branded pay-per-views where you're able to compete directly against the opposing brand using one of your stars against theirs in certain matches. And then of course there's the biggest addition to the mode, online play. Being able to play GM mode online with friends in this game is honestly a ton of fun, and it works incredibly well, albeit with some restrictions such as not being able to play or spectate matches, as well as not being able to use custom GMs. While the limitations are unfortunate, the fun you can have in GM mode online alone makes up for it. Anyways, with all that being said, WWE 2K25 is a bit of a mixed bag. Sure, the gameplay is fun, and some of the modes like My Rise and Showcase are pretty entertaining this year, but at the end of the day, the game is so heavily bogged down by My Faction and the island that it can be hard to enjoy the game at times. When half the roster is locked behind stupid My Faction stuff, and a good majority of the creation suite takes a hit due to the island, these are things which negatively impact the game as a whole and make it difficult for a lot of players to do the things they want to do in this game. Making people play through Showcase to unlock people is one thing, but to force people to play through garbage microtransaction filled modes for hours on end just to get one new superstar added to their roster is a huge problem. Watch watch, next year they'll start locking arenas behind my faction. That's a joke. Long before there was the WWE 2K series, and even before there was such a thing as SmackDown vs. Raw, one series ruled the wrestling game genre, and that was none other than the SmackDown games. From the year 2000, when the first SmackDown game was released on PlayStation, to 2003, the SmackDown games dominated the wrestling video game scene. And I mean, to be honest, it's not like they had much competition. I mean, come on, in 2001, it was either you played SmackDown Just Bring It on PS2, or The Simpsons Wrestling, and let's be honest, we all know which one was worth playing over the other. 2003 though marked the end of the line for the SmackDown series, but it ended on such a high note that it would end up setting the bar for future wrestling games. The final SmackDown game to be released was none other than Here Comes the Pain, and I'll admit, while I never played this game much, I have to say, it is an absolute banger of a game. There is a good reason why Here Comes the Pain is often considered to be the last truly great wrestling game, and while I may not agree with that 100%, I mean, come on, have you played Rumble Roses? It is still a fantastic game that's still worth playing today. So without further ado, let's go back and take a look at SmackDown Here Comes the Pain to find out what exactly made it so awesome. By far, the best part about SmackDown Here Comes the Pain is the gameplay, because man, not only is it incredibly fun, but it's really addicting. When you play Here Comes the Pain, it's really hard to put it down because it does such a great job at keeping you hooked. Plus, the amount of freedom this game gives you is absolutely insane. The game literally lets you wrestle in Times Square and allows you to jump off a helicopter ladder. What more could you ask for? Plus, you can even drive a motorcycle in one of the backstage areas, which is pretty awesome if you ask me. On top of that, the gameplay is elevated by the fact that every move feels super impactful. No matter the move, whether it's a basic strike or a finisher, you always feel the impact of it, making every move feel incredibly satisfying to land. This is further helped by the fact that whenever a move is executed, the ring shakes like crazy, making for one hell of a feeling. Weapons are also super impactful, so you can really feel when you give your opponent severe head trauma with an unprotected shot to the head with a chair. The gameplay of Here Comes the Pain is so smooth and fast that it makes other wrestling games feel slow in comparison. You can absolutely wail on your opponent in this game, and I really love that. Every move transitions into one another nicely, and because of that, it always keeps matches moving at a really nice pace. Now, while Here Comes the Pain's gameplay is very much of the arcade variety, it also does a great job at nailing the simulation gameplay as well. Moves are a bit over exaggerated, sure, but they still feel grounded, which means if you're more of a simulation guy when it comes to wrestling games, this game does the job well, as well as giving you a fun arcade wrestling experience on top of that. Overall, the gameplay of Here Comes the Pain is absolutely fantastic, and after playing this game so much, it's definitely ruined other wrestling games for me, as the gameplay is so perfect that it stomps all over the gameplay of other wrestling games. Moving on to the roster, it's pretty much about what you would expect from a wrestling game of this era. Every big name superstar who was around in 2003 is featured here, and yes, that includes Rico. Now, due to how stacked the roster was in 03, it of course means that this game's roster is absolutely incredible. John Cena, 03 Kane, Undertaker, The Rock, Edge, and Christian are all featured here, making for one of the greatest rosters I've ever seen in a wrestling game. On top of the current for the time superstars, there's a pretty good selection of legends as well, such as Roddy Piper, Nikolai Volkov, Iron Sheik, and even goddamn Hillbilly Jim. The roster in this game is incredible, and sure, while it's nothing compared to the over 150 superstars we have in modern wrestling games, Here Comes the Pain went for quality over quantity, and I really appreciate that about it. You don't need over 150 superstars as long as the superstars featured are worth a damn. Visually, the game still holds up relatively well too. Every superstar in this game looks fantastic, and the entrances are always a blast to watch because of the great visuals. Then there's the creation suite, which might be more in depth than what we even have today. You're given loads of options when it comes to creating a superstar, and you're even able to create a female wrestler, a feature that for a good while after this was completely gone until 2K16 brought it back. Now, while I'm not much of a CAW guy, I gotta say, this game's creation suite is pretty damn good for what it's worth. All in all, the roster, creation suite, and gameplay of Here Comes the Pain are all great, and some of the best a wrestling game has ever had to offer. The gameplay is fast and exciting, the roster is absolutely perfect, and the creation suite might be one of the best of the PS2 era wrestling games. You know what's even better though? This game's season mode. SmackDown Here Comes the Pain might just have one of the most ridiculous ridiculous season modes I've ever seen in a wrestling game, and when I say that, I mean it in a good way. Essentially, the season mode works like it does in every wrestling game, where you pick your superstar and work your way up through whichever brand you're signed to. You can get switched around to different brands as well, making the experience more interesting, but the real fun comes with the fact that this mode is so goddamn random that it's always impossible to predict what's gonna happen next. For example, on my first week of Raw playing as Stone Cold, I was told by JR that I could challenge for the world title. Awesome, I thought to myself. I then lost to Chris Jericho in a singles match, only for Lita to come out and say she wanted to face me in a match for her title. Lita was the world heavyweight champion. I then proceed to beat Lita, only to give her a rematch at Backlash, which ended in like 2 seconds because Lita forgot how ladder matches work. Also, during all this, Goldberg was the women's champ. What the fuck? Yeah, I don't get that either, but the point is that this season mode is incredibly fun, and if you've never played it before, I highly recommend it. Sure, it may not have voice acting or anything like that, but the rest of the mode is so entertaining and enjoyable that it overshadows the lack of voice acting entirely. SmackDown Here Comes the Pain is 100% without a doubt one of the greatest wrestling games of all time, and after playing it extensively myself, I can back up that statement as a fact. The game is just so incredibly fun and engaging, the moves are super impactful, the season mode is an absolute blast to play through, and the roster is as stacked as a roster can get. If you've never played Here Comes the Pain before, you need to give it a try, because you may have more fun with it than even 2K25. But it's not better than Rumble Roses! Have you ever been playing a WWE game and thought to yourself, this is cool and all, but I wish these guys were roided out of their fucking minds and had superpowers? Probably not, but if so, here's WWE Allstars, because it has all of those things. Released in March of 2011, WWE Allstars came out right in between SmackDown vs. Raw 2011 and WWE 12. Allstars was a very different wrestling game though. Instead of being a simulation-based wrestling game like what SVR was starting to turn into, WWE Allstars was a more arcade-style wrestling game, harkening back to games like WrestleMania the arcade game on Sega Genesis. Now I'm gonna be honest and say, WWE Allstars is probably my favorite wrestling game of all time. Unfortunately though, I don't think WWE Allstars really gets the appreciation it deserves.
3 cheers for the return of our master fry cook, SpongeBob! Hip hip! Hooray!
And 3 cheers for the fry cook who took my place while I was gone. Squidward! Hip hip! Boo!
And it's because of that I believe WWE Allstars is the most underrated wrestling game of all time. But what exactly makes WWE Allstars so good, you may ask? Well, hang on, I'm getting to it. WWE Allstars is good because WWE Allstars is a game that takes everything the SVR games were doing at the time and throws all of it out the fucking window. Simulation style gameplay? What's that? Here's a bunch of big ass dudes who can fly. WWE Allstars was also pretty different than SVR just due to the fact that Allstars gave you a lot of choices when it came to legends to play as. When it came to the inclusions of legends in SVR, it was always hit or miss most of the time. WWE Allstars though said fuck it and gave us 15 legends and 15 modern superstars. Actually booting up the game, no way, this is a WWE game? Right off the bat, this menu tells you everything you need to know about the game. You got Hulk Hogan on one side of the menu looking like he inhaled a bunch of steroids for breakfast, and of course the game mode selection on the other side of the screen. Speaking of game modes, there's quite a lot in this game. Now sure, there's not as many match types and modes as there was in SVR. You're not going to find a season mode or fulfill your fantasy in this game, which is probably a good thing because I don't even want to know what WWE Allstars Fulfill Your Fantasy would look like. Instead, the main game modes consist of Exhibition, Path of Champions, and Fantasy Warfare. In terms of actual match types in Exhibition, there's your standard one-on-one, tag team, steel cage, extreme rules, triple threat, fatal 4-way, nothing too out of the ordinary. It would have been cool to see maybe 1 or 2 more match types, but for what this game is trying to accomplish in just being an arcade style fighting game, having a limited amount of match types kind of works. The same can be said for the arena selection. There's only 6 arenas, but man, these arenas are awesome. The SmackDown 5th stage has never looked better, and I absolutely love the look of the SummerSlam arena in this game. What I love so much about this game is that it's not just the wrestlers themselves that are over-exaggerated. Instead, THQ chose to make everything over-exaggerated. The arenas, the entrances, everything just looks like it's larger than life. This extends to the gameplay as well. WWE Allstars is absolutely incredible when it comes to the gameplay. The best way I can describe the gameplay for WWE Allstars is that it's absolutely all over the place. I don't mean that in a bad way though. Matches in this game can get pretty chaotic due to the arcade style nature of the gameplay. Extreme Rules matches in this game are super exciting with weapons everywhere for you to just whack the shit out of your opponent with, and steel cage matches are, well, about what you would expect, but they can still be pretty fun. As for the wrestlers themselves, every wrestler just feels completely different and plays exactly how you would expect them to. All the wrestlers are separated by class, with guys like John Cena, Undertaker, and Hulk Hogan being brawlers, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, and John Morrison being acrobats, Triple H and Bret Hart being grapplers, and Big Show and Andre the Giant being, as they're called in this game, quote-unquote, the big man. Anyways, I love this class system because, as I said, everyone feels different. A grappler doesn't play like a brawler, and a brawler doesn't play like a grappler. Speaking of the wrestlers, the roster for this game is pretty stacked. You got legends like Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, The Rock, Bret Hart, and HBK, while on the superstars side of things, you got guys like John Cena, The Miz, John Morrison, and Rey Mysterio. Not counting DLC, this game has a roster of 30 superstars, which honestly isn't bad. The DLC had guys like Road Warrior, Hawk and Animal, R-Truth, Big Boss Man, and Mark Henry. Unfortunately, the DLC isn't available anymore, but hey, at least the base game's roster is good. In fact, the only way to play with the DLC anymore is by owning the 3DS version, which had the DLC included. Another thing I love about the gameplay of WWE Allstars is just how in-depth it is. Obviously, because it's a wrestling game, you have the ability to reverse moves, but this game takes it a step further and lets you reverse a reversal. It can make for some really awesome sequences, and it's really damn cool when you're able to pull it off. Another thing about reversals is that you're able to straight up block your opponent from reversing your move if you time it right. Reversing in this game is actually a challenge as well, since you really have to be precise with your timing to pull it off. Another great thing about the gameplay is just how impactful everything feels. When you're hitting a combo in your opponent, you really feel every punch because everything just has a sense of impact to it. Everything from regular strikes to signature moves and finishers. The fighting mechanics in this game are absolutely incredible. Being able to just knock people in the air and punch them continuously is really cool, and I love being able to fly across the ring without worrying about being too far away from my opponent. Overall, the gameplay of WWE Allstars is really awesome. Honestly, I think this is the most fun I've had playing a wrestling game in a long time. WWE Allstars perfectly nails the arcade style gameplay, and that's why I love this game so much. It really feels like I'm just playing a remastered version of WrestleMania the arcade game. With all that being said though, I think I've said all there is to say about the gameplay, so how are the other modes like? Spoiler alert, they're really damn good. The first game mode I want to talk about is Path of Champions. I'm gonna be honest, this is probably the mode I spent the most time on as a kid. Path of Champions is, in my opinion, the best mode in this whole game. Essentially, all you do is pick from 3 paths, Undertaker being the World Heavyweight title path, Randy Orton being the WWE title path, and DX being the path for the tag titles. Each path you choose will give you promos from each superstar, and these promos are really well done. This very easily could have been some lazy Mortal Kombat style tower-like game mode, but instead THQ decided to flesh it out with these great looking cutscenes and made the mode more interesting because of them. Seeing Undertaker and Paul Bearer back together again, DX being DX by breaking the 4th wall in their promo, and bald Randy Orton just being a straight menace is just something I really love about the promos in this mode. As for the paths themselves, all of them play pretty much the exact same. When you actually pick a path, you'll be tasked with having to win 10 matches before you can reach whichever championship you're trying to go for. I think the thing I love the most about this mode is that it feels like an actual challenge to get through. When getting near the end of The Undertaker's Path of Champions for this video, I got my ass kicked by Hulk Hogan and The Rock. Eventually though, once you do make it to the end of a path, you win whatever championship you chose and get a little celebratory cutscene at the end. Path of Champions is really fun, and as I said, I believe it's the best part of this whole game. However, there's one more mode that I believe is even better. Fantasy Warfare is absolutely incredible. This takes the whole Legends vs Superstars thing that WWE Allstars as a whole is centered around and makes it an actual game mode. Essentially, Fantasy Warfare is you playing through dream matches such as John Cena vs Hulk Hogan or Big Show vs Andre the Giant. What I love the most about this mode is they actually get you excited to play these matches by having little promo packages play before each match, and they're edited together in a way that makes it seem like the wrestlers are actually talking to each other. The actual matches themselves are really fun, and they offer a lot of variety because you're not playing as one person throughout the whole mode. You're constantly playing someone new. You're even able to choose who you want to play as for these matches, so you make the decision of who you feel is the greatest warrior or the pride of Scotland. This mode is just a blast to play through though, and I absolutely love it. Overall, WWE Allstars is an incredible WWE game. I was surprised when replaying the game for this video just how well it holds up even almost 13 years later after its release. It really is a shame this game doesn't get talked about more often because, as I just said in this video, it really is a great wrestling game. I just wish we could get another good arcade style wrestling game like this again. I said a good arcade style wrestling game. Yeah, I give up.
Meanwhile,
what's the greatest wrestling game from the Xbox 360 generation? Maybe it's SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, or maybe even WWE 2K14. If you said any of those, you're wrong. It's actually WWE 13. SVR07 and 2K14 are great games though. Released in 2012, WWE 13 was, at least from what I remember, the most hyped up wrestling game of all time. They went all out on the marketing for this game, from the awesome cover reveal on Raw with John Laurinaitis and CM Punk, to even having Stone Cold Steve Austin and CM Punk beefing just for the sake of promoting this game. The build up to this game's release was just absolutely insane, and it really set the tone for what this game was going to be like. This game just had so many awesome bits to it that even to this day still make it a blast to go back and play. The Attitude Era mode, the awesome gameplay, and man, that soundtrack was just so damn good. Also, never forget that one Rey Mysterio tweet from when the game came out. Enough about the backstory of this game though. Without further ado, let's dive into WWE 13 and find out what made it so great. First of all, we can't talk about what made this game great without at least mentioning this cover art. This is the type of game cover art that I could see myself getting as a poster because it's just absolutely gorgeous. With CM Punk on the cover and the red X in the background, it just looks so clean. It's definitely the most unique wrestling game cover we've ever gotten. That even extends to the main menu too. I really love the look of this menu with CM Punk on the left side as well as just the gray and red color of everything. It just lets you know right off the bat that this is not your average wrestling game. In fact, the tagline for this game was "Live the Revolution," of course referring to the Attitude Era. This wasn't a video game, it was a revolution. No, I'm not talking about you, get the fuck out of here. The gameplay of WWE 13 is absolutely perfect, and while I do think it's ever so slightly slower than 2K14's gameplay, it's still not as slow as 2K15 on next gen, which is good. You're of course still able to do crazy stuff like do springboard moves moves all over the place, German suplex your opponent onto the steel steps, as well as put your opponent through flaming tables. You can even give yourself infinite finishers and just wild out if you want. You can even run a 40-man Royal Rumble match, which is something you can't even do in the new games. Something that I love about not just WWE 13, but WWE 12 and 2K14 as well, is that they nailed the simulation and arcade style gameplay. They managed to blend both together to create an awesome gameplay experience. This game was fun because you could transition from grapple to grapple and keep matches moving at a pretty fast pace. Matches never had any feeling of slowness to them in this game. The weapon physics in this game were also on a whole other level when compared to what we have now in modern wrestling games. Sure, I had fun with using weapons in 2K24, but in this game, you can do whatever the hell you want. Weapons can be placed anywhere and everywhere, which allows for stuff like this to happen. They even added Sin Cara's shitty match lighting into the game for when you play as him. THQ and Yuke's went hard when creating the gameplay for this game and made it fun as hell. I've said this before in my last gen 2K15 video as well as my 2K14 video, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm repeating myself, but there's no other way to describe it. If you're a fan of the simulation style gameplay, you're able to have your realistic feeling matches if you want, or if you're into the arcade style gameplay, this game offers that as well. Since I've talked about the gameplay a bit, I want to go ahead and talk about the visuals, because while its graphics don't look all that great by today's standards, I still think the game looks pretty good. All the arenas, entrances, everything in this game still looks pretty alright. I mean, somehow Edge looked better in this game than he did in 2K20. Really, when it comes to the visuals and presentation of this game though, it's all about the little things. The way the blood drips onto the mat, the different camera cuts during big moves, all these things really make a big difference and really add to the fun of the game. Now moving on to the arena selection. The arena selection in this game was nuts. This game honestly had a pretty great selection when it came to Attitude Era arenas such as WrestleMania 15, Rock Bottom, 2 Raw is War arenas, and many, many more. I still to this day don't think there's been a WWE game with more playable Attitude Era arenas than WWE 13. Well, besides WWE 2K16 of course. Now talking about the roster, I have to say this roster is nothing short of amazing. Combined with the modern superstars and the Attitude Era superstars in this game, there were nearly 100 playable superstars featured on the roster of this game. This game spoiled us with just how many legends were featured in this game. Stone Cold, Eddie Guerrero, all 3 faces of Mick Foley, as well as many other legends. WWE 13 has the perfect roster in my opinion. You just have so many superstars to choose from, and I love it because it adds a lot of variety. Having all these Attitude Era superstars playable in a modern WWE game on Xbox 360 was insane at the time, and while it's not really anything special now, you still gotta admit it was pretty big back then. Moving on to the match types, WWE 13 had them in spades. Inferno, Championship Scramble, Special Guest Referee, King of the Ring, everything you could possibly ask for from a wrestling game. When combined with this game's excellent gameplay, all these match types are incredibly fun to play. I've never been a big fan of last man standing matches in WWE games, but I can play them in WWE 13 and have fun because they actually feel like a real challenge. Overall, everything about WWE 13's gameplay is awesome. Matches are super chaotic and unpredictable, which is great if you just want to play a wrestling game without having to worry about realism or anything like that slowing you down. WWE 13 is definitely the game to play. Sure, the game's not perfect, there's definitely bugs and glitches, but the bugs weren't 2K20 bad. Instead, they actually improved the game and made it more fun, as weird as that sounds. I mean, look at this. Sheamus just died. Later in the same match, me and my nephew did a spot that was so devastating and brutal that it actually broke the camera for the rest of this match. This game is awesome. Another thing that I feel made this game so great was the soundtrack. WWE 13 didn't really have a soundtrack like any of the SmackDown vs. Raw games had, as it more or less just used wrestlers' themes instead. But if you played WWE 13 as a kid, you know this soundtrack was just full of bangers. David Otunga's run in the WWE post-Next Nexus was kind of forgettable, but this game would have you thinking he was a top guy just because of how frequently his theme would play. I'm not gonna lie and say his theme wasn't a banger though. Not only that, but the theme song for this game was even better. Everyone who played this game growing up forever has Revolution by Pennywise ingrained into their memory. So while this is a relatively small thing, I still wanted to bring it up as the soundtrack definitely made this game more iconic than it already was. As good as the rest of this game is though, the best part of this whole thing is by far the Attitude Era mode, which let you relive all the iconic moments from that era, starting in 1997 and ending in 2001 when WWE bought WCW. This was and still is such a great mode. As someone who was born after the Attitude Era, playing this mode as a kid was just so cool because I got to play through matches I wasn't alive to watch. This mode was also the first time they'd ever done anything like this, letting you relive real-life matches from WWE's history. I mean, yeah, Legends of WrestleMania did it first, but that game sucked, so who the hell cares? WWE 13 perfected this formula, though, by recreating everything that happened in these matches with animated cutscenes. They even animated the debut of Cactus Jack in WWE, which even today is so cool to watch in game. The Attitude Era mode felt like one long campaign spanning multiple chapters, focusing on different superstars and stories like the rise of DX, the Brothers of Destruction, Mankind, The Rock. Everything that happened in the Attitude Era was fully recreated in this game, and it was done wonderfully. As you progress through the mode, you'd even see a full timeline comparing the ratings of Monday Nitro and Monday Night Raw spanning from 1995 to 2001. If you haven't played the Attitude Era mode in WWE 13, I highly suggest you do so because it's a lot of fun. Even if you've never been a big fan of 2K showcases, I can guarantee you that this mode is more fun than any 2K showcase you've ever played. It's certainly more fun than 2K24's showcase. I think this mode is what made the game as memorable as it was though. The fact that this entire game was centered around the Attitude Era was awesome because it elevated it to higher heights. When you look at the cover, you immediately think of the Attitude Era. When you load up the game and look at the menu, again, you think of the Attitude Era. This game as a whole just felt like one big love letter to that era of wrestling, and that's why I love this game so much. With all that being said, WWE 13 is a great wrestling game. It was great when it came out in 2012, and it's still great even in 2024. It's hard to think that this game is 12 years old now. The Attitude Era mode is still really fun to play through. The gameplay is just straight up awesome, and yeah, well, there's bugs and glitches here and there. As I said earlier in the video, they don't ruin the game. They just make it more fun. The only problem with this game is the fact that it's not backwards compatible with the Series X, which really sucks because I'd love to be able to play this game on current gen. Or they could pull a Final Fantasy 13 and just give us WWE 13-2 instead. 2011, the year that marked the end of the SmackDown vs. Raw series, which started all the way back in 2004 and ended with what many consider to be the best in the series, SmackDown vs. Raw 2011. The SmackDown vs. Raw games are remembered as being some of the greatest wrestling games we've ever gotten. So when the series came to an end and it came time for a new set of wrestling games to take its place, many were skeptical of what was next. How were THQ and Yuke's going to follow up a series that was as beloved as SmackDown vs. Raw? What were they even gonna call this new wrestling game? You know, maybe my expectations were a little too high. Released in November of 2011, WWE 12 was met with pretty positive reception from not only the fans, but the critics too, and you know how much of a bitch it can be to please them. The point is that despite it being the end of the SmackDown vs. Raw series, and it being a completely different game compared to what people were used to, people really enjoyed WWE 12, and it's easy to see why. This game was truly something special, and I don't think any WWE game that followed it has reached the level of quality that it was at. Not to say that games like WWE 13 and 2K14 were bad games. I mean, for one, those games in WWE 12 were pretty much the exact same gameplay wise. I'm just trying to say that WWE 12 did certain things better, like having the Road to WrestleMania mode, for example, not to mention the amount of WCW legends featured in this game's roster. I also just really love this game's whole aesthetic when it comes to the look of the main menu and cover art. Both WWE 12 and WWE 13 have some of the best cover arts I've ever seen when it comes to to wrestling games. It's the type of box art that gets you hyped to play the game, and when you actually do start the game, you get this badass intro that's pretty reminiscent of the old Raw and SmackDown intros we used to get with rock music and whatnot. That begs the question though, is the gameplay as good as the game wants you to believe? Well, let's find out. The gameplay of WWE 12 is, well, to put it simply, fucking awesome. WWE 12 took everything from SVR 2011, like the simulation style gameplay and the insane weapon physics, and improved on them, which is probably the best thing they could have done, as SVR 2011's gameplay was damn near perfect. Now, going back to WWE 12 after not having played it in almost a decade, it was certainly a little weird to get used to the way this game played. The gameplay, while similar to 13 and 2K14, was a bit slower paced than it was in those games. Not to say it's slow to a point where it's not fun, but it is noticeably slower. Despite this though, every strike still feels relatively fast and fluid, as well as impactful. That's the one thing I love the most about this game, is that every move has impact to it. When you put someone through a table or hit a finisher on your opponent, you can really feel the impact, and honestly, some of that is just down to the awesome camera angles and sound design. Something else I really enjoyed about the gameplay is that you're pretty much free to do whatever you want. WWE 12 lets you play without limits, which is exactly the type of thing I like in my wrestling games. I love being able to place weapons wherever I want and use them however I want without the game telling me, no, you can only place this table here, not there. There's other little things about the gameplay that I enjoy as well, like the fact that you can take weapons from the crowd in Extreme Rules matches, and even being able to just wild out in ladder matches. The fact that I can do a top rope dive to my opponent on an announce table as fucking Mark Henry really speaks volume to how fun the gameplay is. Part of what makes WWE 12's gameplay as fun as it is the chaos of it all. This game is just all around unpredictable. One minute you're hitting a pedigree on the ground, the next you're 10 feet in the air. Why? I don't know, but it's goofy and that's why I like this game so much. WWE 12 is one of those games where you can just shut your brain off and have a good time. It's an arcade style wrestling game at its core with simulation mechanics baked into it, but the simulation stuff doesn't bog down the game, causing it to be slow and boring. Hell, if you want, you can just turn adrenaline off and bam, problem solved. Put somebody through an announce table or whatever. Overall, the gameplay of WWE 12 is really fun. Now sure, is it perfect? No, there's certainly problems, but all games have problems. Just look at 2K20. With the bugs and glitches I encountered in WWE 12, none of them really ruined the experience for me. Now the one thing that I feel really made this game awesome was the addition of Create an Arena. Create an Arena is something that of course we still have today in the newer games, but this game actually marked its first appearance, which is really cool. Now because this is the first appearance of Create an Arena, it is pretty limited, but it's still a really nice feature. You're still able to recreate actual WWE arenas if you want to, but you also have the freedom to just make something like whatever the hell this is. Now before I move on to universe mode, there's two more things I'm going to talk about. The first of which being the roster, because while it's not 100% perfect, it's certainly on the smaller side compared to the rosters of other wrestling games, but it still had superstars that actually added some value to it. Of course, the roster featured just about everyone who was with the company at the time, like Yoshitatsu, Vladimir Kozlov, and Evan Bourne, but it also featured a lot of WCW and WWE legends like Arn Anderson, Kevin Nash, and Vader. As to the match types, you got your Hell in a Cell, Inferno, and Extreme Rules, and all of them are about as fun as you'd expect them to be. Anyways, now that I've talked about the gameplay, match types, and the roster, I think now's a good time for me to talk about the other modes. Now it's time for me to talk about one of the best modes in this whole game, Universe Mode. Universe is a mode that no matter what game I try it in, whether it's 2K14 or 2K24, I can just never get into it. Essentially, Universe Mode is you running each show the way you want. You can pick your roster, brands, and completely customize your show schedule to make it your own. Usually whenever I try Universe, I end up getting bored pretty quickly, but Universe Mode in WWE 12 is just a whole different story. While Universe Mode in the other games gives you complete control over what happens on your shows, this game doesn't really do that. Instead, WWE 12 makes things more interesting by adding in all these different surprises and cutscenes in the mode so you're never able to predict what's gonna happen. For example, when you play and win your first match in Universe Mode, you get a victory animation like normal, and just when you think the match is over, out comes Brock fucking Lesnar, who mind you wasn't even signed with WWE at the time and was still in UFC, and he comes out and just kicks your ass. By doing that though, you also also unlock Brock as a playable character outside of universe mode. Things like that are what made this mode so fun in this game, and I found myself legitimately getting into it because of it. There's so many other things that I didn't even mention, like the fact that there's drafts in this universe mode as well, which is something I don't even think we have nowadays. But the point is, WWE 12's universe mode is really fun, and if you haven't tried it, I highly suggest playing it because it's way better than the universe modes we have now. The last thing I want to talk about before I end off this video is Road to WrestleMania. Road to WrestleMania has always been one of my favorite modes in the WWE game. It started in SmackDown vs. Raw 2009, and WWE 12 would end up being its last appearance in a WWE game. Road to WrestleMania up until WWE 12 had always been pretty straightforward. You select a story, the story follows a specific superstar, and lasts up until WrestleMania. Each story would always be separate from one another and would usually be pretty short. So WWE 12 said fuck all that and had a whole 12-hour long story instead. The road to WrestleMania in this game is absolutely insane and could honestly be a whole video on its own, which I might do at some point, so for that reason I'm not going to go super in depth into the story. Plus, if I did, this video would be like 2,000 hours long and I really don't want that. The road to WrestleMania in WWE 12 is broken up into 3 stories: the villain story, the outsider story, and the hero story. The villain story follows Sheamus and his faction, the United Kingdom, as they aim to completely take over the WWE, which they do by winning every title in the company. The faction then implodes, leading all of them to face off for WrestleMania, where Sheamus single-handedly wins every title in the WWE, and normally for your average road to WrestleMania, that would be where the story ends. But instead, out comes Triple H to challenge Sheamus for the WWE Championship. This then begins the outsider story, which follows Triple H as he tries to accomplish his goal of becoming a 17-time world champion. And you finally finish the outsider story, it ends with Triple H straight up retiring at SummerSlam after becoming WWE Champion once again, in turn becoming a 17-time champ. This then leads to the hero story, which follows your custom superstar named Jacob Cass, a rookie who won NXT and is trying to prove himself in WWE. During the story, it's announced that there's a new general manager in control of both Raw and SmackDown, and not too long after that, it's revealed the general manager is actually Kevin Nash. This then leads to Kevin wanting to bring back WCW, and to do this, he brings back a bunch of WCW legends like Vader and Road Warrior Animal to fuck shit up. The story ends up becoming a battle between WWE and WCW, with Jacob Cass being the main hero. When the story finally reaches its conclusion, Kevin Nash and WCW take control of WWE, with Monday Night Raw turning into Monday Nitro. And rather than the story ending at WrestleMania, it instead ends at WCW Starrcade, which is just the coolest shit ever. Overall, the road to WrestleMania in this game is dumb fun because of how over the top it is. It doesn't try to be serious or anything like that, and it really makes the mode more enjoyable. This road to WrestleMania is, in my opinion, the definitive road to WrestleMania mode out of all the SmackDown vs. Raw games that feature the mode. In conclusion, WWE 12 is one hell of a wrestling game. The universe mode, as I said earlier, is incredible, the gameplay is just amazing, and the road to WrestleMania with its incredible stories is enough to put anything George R.R. Martin has ever written to shame. Hell, you can still play the game online if you have the online pass, so why don't we try that? Nobody joined.